Good evening, everyone. This is our briefing session for City Commission. This is when we typically talk about meetings we've been to, update each other on calendar items, and any items that are not on our agenda this evening. So it's very informal, and I usually start with our city manager, and then we'll go around and take everybody else's updates and comments. Ron, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things to cover this evening. We have, just to give you some project updates, the work between here and downtown is going pretty well. We've got, if you're south of Points trying to go east, you're going to run into quite a few barricades, but mostly on Houston and around 6th Street and Juliet, and on Houston primarily. So Juliet right now is closed essentially from the Juliet Library entrance to Pierre Street. That's a water line project that we're putting in at that location. And then Houston is closed from from Juliet down to 5th. And then 5th is closed from Points to about just past Houston Street. So those are the stormwater projects that most of the project has been focused on this year. But otherwise, those projects are moving along very nicely. Most of the storm water pipes are in the ground, and we'll just have some pavement work to do. 5th Street has essentially been reconstructed basically from Fort Riley Boulevard all the way to Points, or will be after this project, with quite a bit of new curb and gutter and then new asphalt pavement the full width. So that's a nice improvement as part of that project. I did update the County Commission last week on kind of my bi-monthly meeting with them. It went well, just kind of gave them an overview of the projects, wanted to remind them of the BevHeb tax abatement component that they were noticed on, and answered any questions they had about that at their session. We do have a joint city-county meeting coming up, would be on the 15th. So that would be next week. If there are items, we kind of like to try and have those by Thursday of this week. So as of right now, I'm not sure we have any outstanding items. So if there's a particular subject matter you're wanting us to pursue for that, please let us know, or you can tell us here. Probably one of the main things that we wanted to visit about tonight is, so on the strategic plan item, that's on the consent agenda. We would typically have one or up to 2 commissioners that would serve on that selection committee. So sometimes we determine that at the briefing session, or at least come to an agreement, or we can, and certainly ratify it as part of the motion on the consent agenda item. So if you could give us some feedback on that would be good.
I would like to serve on that selection committee. I don't know other commissioners that are interested. Nobody's jumping at it.
I'd be interested.
Okay. Is there anyone else that's interested? Then we'll put Aaron and myself, and I'll do it during our regular meeting for approval.
All right, very good. Next week's work session is on the flood mitigation plan that staff has been developing, and so we'll put that in front of you. I know the Wildcat Creek group met this past week and had some updates, and that'll be a component of that overall effort. And there'll be an update on the 2D modeling and how we've utilized that and how we do plan to utilize it going forward. So we are going to delay in it a little bit because we're waiting for a new update to come to that. And so there was some training that was scheduled to occur with that software, and we decided to wait until we got the update for the training. I'll let Jason speak to maybe the 12th Street project and give you an update on it. And Dennis may have an update on some of the rental assistance interest that's out there. The other thing that we wanted to do next Tuesday is give you an update of kind of where we stand financially year to date in our 2020 expenses and revenue. So we'll have that update for you as well. And I think that's all I've got, Mayor.
I just want to ask you about some of the conferences that we have coming up, and I don't remember what's already finished. I don't know if the League of Kansas Municipalities and registration for AUSA and registration for the National League of Cities. I know they're all virtual, and I don't know if anybody's going to be participating or if there's a cost or how it is this time around.
The league meeting is actually next week.
Okay.
I think it starts on Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think. And it's actually the 13th through the 16th. So I know Commissioner Morris is registered for that. I also registered for it. So we're your voting delegates. And it might be possible to register still. I'm not quite sure on that one. It was a little more of a deadline. The National League of Cities Conference is November 18th through the 20th. They had an early bird registration for September 30th. I'm not aware of any interest at this point that anybody's expressed.
I think it's been extended to October 9th. I'm not sure.
Yes, I think
So
you're
I was
right.
going to review it, and maybe if I wanted to just attend a session or two, I will let you know. If not, I
Okay.
haven't made up my mind yet on that one.
So there's time.
And I think I would like to do the virtual part. I'm so glad we don't have to travel,
Yep.
since we killed the budget.
Right. And AUSA?
AUSA is virtual. I think you can register at any time, so we'll forward the AUSA information to you, and there's no charge. It's free. You just
Do you know the dates, anybody?
Usually in November sometime. I was talking to Christine Benny the other day,
Okay.
and I don't remember what she said about the dates.
no, the AUSA it's usually late October or November. Yeah, but we'll forward it tomorrow to you,
Yeah.
that information. Again, it's just a matter of signing up because there's no fee for it. And I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
Yep.
Jason?
Just to expand on the 12th Street project, we have opened the north half of 12th Street, so you can come in and out of the alleys behind the restaurants of Stickles and Aggie Lou and Lucha, as well as over by the hotel and Tanner's. So that alley is passable, and those delivery trucks are using that alley today. So north of that, though, up to Bluemont is open as well. We do have fenced off areas next to the garage and the hotel still. And again, they won't be done until probably March, April of 21. The south half of 12th Street is making a lot of progress daily. Just down there this afternoon, they are putting in the infrastructure for the trees. They're bringing in new soils, plus they have new components in there. They look like plastic tubes that'll allow their roots and the soils and the moisture to be adequate for these trees to grow, which we desire. So these improvements are coming along. I would anticipate really within the next 3 to 4 weeks, they'll be complete. So by the end of October is the goal. And with that will come opportunities for vehicles and pedestrians to use this area. So they really have made a lot of progress on the below grade infrastructure, and we'll start to see pavement and bricks very soon.
That's good. You know, I was listening to the Riley County Commission meeting yesterday, and Gina was on there, and she was talking about the platforms and how that's changed. Can you let us know a little bit more about that? She didn't go into too many details, but it seems like there was a delay because there was so much competition for the same type of platforms.
So there's a national run on lumber and building materials. We've heard upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 increases on single-family home construction just because of the lumber costs have jumped that much. The demand is outpacing supply, so it's been very difficult for people to get materials, especially on the lumber side. So no different here. The decking material that was attempted to order has been back ordered. We are at a point with BHS where they think by next week they hope to start putting down the decking and installing some of these floors. We'll have to do some temporary measures until that rest of the order comes in, but optimistically, by the end of next week, we hope to have something for the community to use. Pessimistically, it might be 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But they're really trying to make do with what they have. They'll have to wait until they get there. They're assembling a lot of these things at their site. So BHS's construction headquarters is where a lot of this construction and fabrication is taking place. So we're hopeful next week when they arrive, they'll be able to establish a presence in the parking stalls and allow those businesses to occupy those platforms soon.
Yeah. As long as they're meeting all the requirements and it's safe and people know what's going on, that's the key piece to it, since it's going to be a little different than
I
what
talked to
it is.
DMI about that today, and they said that, same thing that Jason said, a little bit delay on some of the handling, but they were gonna put them in incrementally, starting, I think, at the chef. The first one was gonna be put there, and then it'll be a couple days for another one, and they'll gradually roll them out that way, but next week is the target date.
You have the agreements in front of you this evening for signature, Mayor. So we have established the relationship with all 7 businesses. All of them have submitted their site plan, and they have all agreed to the terms that we set forth. Once those are signed by you, we'll return those to those businesses, and then they'll reach out to the state of Kansas and receive their extension of premise for alcohol. And we have everything else in place. So as soon as that process wraps up and they get the permission from the state, then we'll be ready, once the platforms are in, for dining with alcohol to occur.
Good. So if we're doing this temporary model this time, is it going to look different next year then? The material, I don't know, we're using different material is what I'm thinking.
Well, the material will come in, as it comes in, it'll be replaced. So if it's something
Okay.
temporary in nature, they'll make it permanent. These agreements go through the end of the year. The resolution went through the end of the year in terms of granting the permission for the alcohol to cross the streets. We'll have to get back in the room and talk about, once January, or really December rolls around, are they going to continue? Are we going to disassemble these and take them and then bring them back? If we do bring them back, then do we just go for a temporary measure again, or are we looking at something more permanent? I will tell you, we've been talking with legal about making changes to Aggieville for 12th Street that would be permanent, that would be basically between Morrow and the alley, but it'd be very site specific, and we'll create the areas and create the rules for that area. It'll more than likely be its own section in the code that just deals with that area, and then as we develop new areas, we can add to that code.
Yeah. Aggieville will be a little easier since they're redeveloping all of that area anyways.
Correct.
I think, okay, I just wasn't sure. She was talking about a lot of items and that one kind of stuck out. So that's good that we'll have something in place hopefully sometime in October.
Yep,
Thank you, Jason.
you're welcome.
Tammy? Thank you.
Mayor,
Dennis?
I
Yeah.
did look up the AUSA conference. Commissioner Hattasol was right. It is next Tuesday, the 13th through the 16th, so it's coming right up. So we will send out that registration information to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dennis?
Good evening, Dennis Marstall, Assistant City Manager. A couple updates for you. The Recovery Task Force is going to meet this Thursday, October 8th at 2 p.m. That will be on Zoom, but it'll be on the city website, Facebook, as well as Government Channel 3. And part of that task force conversation will have some updates about the different county orders, where we are in the percent positive, update from K-State, and some updates from the county health department about some of their upcoming drive-through testing stations. But also, the main focus of the meeting on Thursday will be a conversation about economic recovery and some long-term view, really in the context of a couple industries here in Manhattan, one being our travel and tourism industry, and we'll have some information about, we know the airline industry's in flux and what that impact is, but also thinking about what we're doing for business support with the county Sparks money and the chamber, the grant program. To give you a little information, the Chamber of Commerce is partnering with the county Sparks funds to do up to $15,000 per applicant for business grants, and they've had over 200 applicants for that, and so we know that that fund will be exhausted. And so trying to think about what are some other economic recovery measures the task force can brainstorm going forward. On that parallel is we did the MHK Safe and Open campaign, where we've encouraged businesses to take the pledge to have industry and local business practices to promote safe operations during this COVID era. To date, we have 138 businesses who have agreed to take the pledge to implement those measures. We've had over 35 individuals who've also agreed to take the pledge. And then in corresponding with that, we've talked to you before that we're using some of our local Spark Cares funds to do a masking information, as well as just some general COVID, social distancing. How do we have good practices in place? Some of that information is being developed now by our different partner ad agencies. New Boston is doing the mass video shoots right now, and then Bajillion is doing another video shoot. And so these should start rolling out within the next 2 weeks. So you'll see some information about those, and we'll share them with the commission before they roll out to the community. Lastly, talking about the Spark funds, for the city's portion, our 2.9 million that we have allocated for us, we have put in our first request from the city for expenses incurred by the city, including some payroll time. And so our first request was over $400,000. And then in addition to that, we also have what we call direct aid request, where we want to use some of our local allocated money to support a rent and mortgage assistance program for our local community, just the Manhattan residents. We've earmarked initially $210,000 for that. We're partnering with the Manhattan Emergency Shelter, MESI, and they have already identified that they will expend that $210,000 and probably can use more. And so we are now evaluating all of our anticipated expenditures to see how we might be able to free up some of our allocated money to give a little bit more assistance to that program. In addition to that, one area where we may come up with some more money is we do have some money earmarked to do a travel and tourism safe meeting campaign, where we'll work with the CVB to help promote to the meeting planners to actually come continue with your meetings that are booked, or here are the safe practices that we've implemented at our convention center to encourage people to meet in Manhattan. And so that conversation's ongoing, and we're working on a final dollar amount based on our total allocation. So we might be able to find some dollars there to reallocate for our rent and mortgage assistance, knowing how much there's a demand for that.
Dennis, hold that thought for a second.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hattasol, who did you say was going to be administering the rental assistance? Was you the Manhattan Housing Authority?
The
No.
emergency shelter,
Emergency
MESI,
shelter.
yeah.
So if somebody, I run into somebody who says that they need some help paying the rent, we should send them to
MISI.
emergency shelter?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
They have experience back in 07, 08 with, I can't think of the name of the federal program back then when there was a recovery effort. And so they've been a good partner. And some of the eligibility for that is you have to have a COVID-related job or income impact. So if you've been furloughed, your hours have been cut, or you faced a layoff, that will make you eligible. And the program is established so that if you are currently in arrears from March, you haven't been able to make your payments because of your COVID-related setback, that we can even use some funds to help catch them up and then pay some of the rent going forward. So that program, you'll hear more about that in earnest for advertising from us, but really they've been overwhelmed with just this initial information that's gone out about the program. But we will put some more detailed communications out through our communications team and Vivian probably next Monday, once we have a identified total amount available for the program. That's all I had.
Dennis, is it possible, like you said, if they're overwhelmed, to get a part-time person with the COVID funds to address this particular issue? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that want that information. And certainly you don't want to take away staff from the shelter who have their own responsibilities. Is that something we've thought of? I know COVID money is also used for personnel that's dedicated to COVID.
Right. Yes, and one caveat though, unfortunate with the Spark Cares Fund, and it's a county rule, is that they have said no more than 5% of the money for the program can go to administrative or staffing fees. And so MISI will exceed that given the volume that they're addressing right now. And so we have not found another way to help bolster their staff to help administer the program to address their staff costs more than the 5% that's available. So we're having those conversations now to see how we might be able to better support their staffing needs, potentially outside of Spark funds.
One of the things that we're analyzing is as you know, we got getting another round of CDBG funds, 300,000 that the point of emphasis on it was for rental and mortgage assistance. So we think, and that one doesn't have the tight timeline of year. You have to have it all spent by year end. It goes well into, I think we've got 2 years to spend that, maybe 3. So that may be an avenue to help with some of the staffing as well. So, but we have to, if you remember the process, we have to hold a public hearing and develop a plan for that 300,000. So that's something we're working to bring to you.
I think it'd be good to have one part-time or somebody working just on that, because all of you have so many other responsibilities. It would be hard to, just the process is so convoluted. Listening to Tammy Robertson yesterday again at the commission meeting, things just keep changing constantly. So I don't even know how all of you are keeping up with it. Erin wanted to say something.
Dennis, how can the funds be already requested when you haven't even opened it up yet? I mean, it's discouraging for people to apply.
Well, no, the word is out,
Yeah.
meaning we've requested it, we've let it be known that
Right.
we're going to do this program and that they're going to administer it. And so
I know.
they've actually been doing a little bit, knowing that they're going to have CDBG money, but now that we can open it up, so they've been doing some rental assistance all along, but now that they can advertise that we will be able to help with mortgages as well, and then some utility assistance. And so the word has gotten out. And so they are fielding these interest calls, and that's where they've been keeping track and understanding what the volume is.
210,000 isn't very much, is it? How, what is the maximum per person?
The maximum per person is $8,000 if you go into if you are in arrears from March, April, May.
Okay.
They are basically assuming that maybe the average client will probably use around $3,500 because we will pay forward through October, November, and December if needed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morris asked variations of what my questions were, but I just wanted to bring to your attention, I think there's already been multiple people approached me from different ways, and you're saying the word has gotten out, and you reported to us last Tuesday that, you know, it'd be active Monday. I think KSNT did a story on Thursday and Friday that got some of the word out. But the problem I have currently is nothing more of understanding what the eligibility is and where to direct people beyond go to MISI. And that is, you know, definitive as of today now. Last Tuesday we talked about there being potentially crisis, other players potentially to go through. But is there, I mean, do we plan on putting something sooner than later? If we're waiting a week for the PIO or to put out information, then we're putting out information, it sounds like, to a program that's already exceeded, is that my understanding, exceeded their threshold of what they've been awarded. I don't know. It's not a good place, and there's probably no way to walk it back to put the toothpaste back in. But whoever we're working with to administer that should have clear open and close application deadlines, so we're all on the same page, so there isn't this question of equity and people waiting. If I tell them to wait, you know, I've been told to wait till Monday, but then come to find out they've, you know, potentially been getting in line before that. Stuff like that is frustrating.
Well, and I'll say this mirrors actually the way the Department of Commerce and the state has run the program. It's basically first come, first serve. And so when they've done all their application for business grants and commerce, the good point on this, though, is that we do have the local CDBG money that we can fall back on. However, not everyone will qualify by income for the CDBG money. But as we said, this, what we're calling the third round of CDBG, doesn't have as many strings attached to it. So while we know that we're going to exhaust the Spark funds, why we can't announce things until we understand how much we can use from CDBG to get that out there. But again, also as they're going through this, finalizing once they do the application at MISI, and they are our primary partner. MISI has gotten the word out to other local social service agencies that they have this program. So there's a network that's been going on for the communication to funnel their clients over to MISI. But for the general public to have this understanding, how can they contact and get information on that? The one point is MISI. It's always been our intended partner on this one. But once we understand the CDBG, that will open up some opportunities. But again, until we process these applications, we may find out of the 200,000, 210,000 that we actually have a bit more capacity. We just have to get through everyone's total amount needed, like we said, maybe average of 3,500. As they're going through this and what they're seeing from initial requests, they've not gone through all the screening to actually get to the eligibility. You have to verify that they are COVID impacted on their income. So it's in flux, and I know it's frustrating, but that's why we do want to make sure we give out definitive information once we have it based upon this Sparks money and CDBG money.
Dennis, maybe you can speak to that even at the Recovery Task Force meeting. Sometimes people that may be, and I've gotten a few of those same messages as well, some people that need this type of assistance may not have ever needed it before, so they may not have ever had to go to social services for anything, and are just now trying to navigate what all of that means. So maybe if you talked about it briefly for 5 minutes at the Recovery Task Force meeting, or even 10 minutes about where to go, what it is, and the limitations and eligibility. And I think we don't even know. So it would be good to have something out there for the public, since there are people who need this right now, and we don't even know how much longer this is going to go on. So.
Right, and we'll do, like we said, the business grant program, where they only have a maximum of 15,000 per business impacted, and they already know by their application load that they don't have enough funds to address the applicants. So we're seeing this as a unfortunate theme.
One more while we're talking about these pots, the nonprofit. Have we heard an update on the nonprofit from GMCF? If they're going to exhaust their funds, or they're looking through applications?
I have not heard, so that's something maybe we can try and get for the task force meeting too.
Yeah, they said they received applications and they were going to review them last Thursday, but I don't know where they are in the reviewing process, and I don't know if they're doing more rounds of the reviewing process. From the chamber, they said they received 150, I just heard you say 200, and about half of them were complete applications. And even then, I don't know what those applications require. I suppose I could, should have just gone on and see what it actually requires. But they did have an actual application, so that's easier to send to the chamber. And I sent my links out to as many folks as I can think of, but I felt maybe the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, their timeline was so short. And I think that I was surprised at how short that was. It was like a week or two and then they were done. So we'll see. And yeah, updates at the Recovery Task Force would be good. That way everybody's viewing it on Facebook as well.
Will do. We got that programmed on the agenda.
Thank you. I'll go back to Rob. Did you want to add anything to our briefing session? Thank you. Katie? Thanks, Katie. Aaron? Okay. Linda?
Last week, I participated in the Wildcat Creek, let's see the name, flood mitigation meeting, and we hadn't had a meeting since January. Chad Bunger and Samantha Estabrook are the staff leads, and they presented, it was poorly attended, they presented a list of 30 things to do, the to-do list, I guess, from their perspective. And we're going to have to talk about it some more. I know it's coming to the commission soon, the 13th, right? And October 13th. And my initial take was that it had a lot of things to do after the flood, and my expectations were at the beginning that we were going to be trying to do some things to prevent floods. So there needs to be a better balance there from just my perspective. The Flint Hills Regional Council is having a retreat on the 16th on Friday. And in the meantime, they have gotten several nice grants from the federal government, EPA and EDA, which is Economic Development. They got some CARES money also. But there's a need in that organization to have some money for match. And typically they use dues money from the different jurisdictions, the cities and the counties in that 7-county region. That's, it's just hard to get that much money. And so we decided to connect, our chair is Richard Weichselman from Wamego. So we're participating in the Wamego Match Day on October 8th, which is 2 days from now. So if anyone wants to make a contribution, I want to make an announcement that it's a worthy cause. I also caught up with the clipping. I have the clipping for Riley County sees a 12.4% increase in real estate sales over 2019. Is that the whole county and not necessarily the city? I'm not sure we know.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the whole county.
Well, yeah, that's what it said, but I just wondered about the numbers in the county. And I don't have anything spectacular to talk about other than just people, pay attention to this virus and wear your masks and social, and I call it physical distancing, something more even than social, but it matters. And we're seeing, there was a news clip in the car on the way here about so many of Kansas's counties are turning red with an increase in positive cases. So there's a nursing home out in, I'm not sure where it is. I knew a woman that was in the nursing home, and there are like 26 cases in her nursing home, and she just died yesterday. And that's in a wee little town in the far west of Kansas. So it is emerging, I guess is the right word, in some of the smallest communities that had been spared to date, and the dynamic is changing and always on the move. So we have to protect ourselves. Thank you.
So I was at the intergovernmental, I think several of us were there, so just a few updates from that. We already spoke about the Spark funds. K-State said they're using some of their Spark money. They had ventilation issues in some of their rooms, so they're going to put some money into that. They're going to use some money for their quarantine and isolation areas to make sure they're better when students stay there, and put some money into testing, contact tracing, and emergency payroll. And I think that's from from $2 million, about 400 for each of those things, 400 or 500 for each of those things, I believe. RCPD said they received $288,000, and they're using that for payroll costs, communication supplies, and updating their briefing room, so it's more socially distanced for everybody. Jason Smith reported also on the chamber funds. We just discussed that. Nonprofit funds. I'm on the library board. They're slowly phasing in-person browsing. Until now, everything was online, and they're doing more things such as story walks and such. They've had great participation, even though they were online. They had a lot of people accessing everything they could to read and still be involved in the library, books, videos, everything that's on there. I'm on the Riley County Health Mental Task Force. There was a brief meet and greet online for the crisis intervention training. We were originally going to do this earlier but because of COVID, everything had to come to a standstill and we can't do it in person. But I think most of you here know that Daryl Asher is taking over for Richard Fink, who was originally the one who started the CIT for all of us. And CIT is going to be incredible. That's what they use for more de-escalation strategies and how to work together as opposed to just working in our little silos. So we're all trained, and especially the community knows what's going on as well. They are rescheduling the training. Bren, who's one of the co-responders with RCPD, and Pawnee, they're trying to get more people trained as trained therapists, so they are somebody available 24/7 for co-responders, because mental health needs are increasing in our community. So there's always somebody to at least work with PD. You just never know when those dispatch calls are going to come out. And I think all of you participated in the Douglas Center beam signing, so I think that went well. So I'm looking forward to all of that opening up. I did want to ask, Morgan, I'll go ahead and have you talk before I ask anything else.
I don't have anything in particular other than I've been playing in a lot of charity golf tournaments lately, and every single one of them had pretty much maximum capacity of people playing because people are dying to do something. And so we need to see what we can do to encourage people or organizations to schedule responsible events to allow people to get out and enjoy themselves. We've done a nice job of trying to keep people from, we can't keep people from dying because that's the natural order of things and it's going to happen, but we can't keep going around keeping people from living. And so I've just, whether it's the parade, I think the Veterans Parade, I think is on, last we knew. It sounds like the Christmas holiday parade, lighted parade is moving forward. And so I would like to get the word out to other organizations to try to schedule stuff as best you can to give people the opportunity, because the thing that's really, one of the things I loved about being on the commission before was all of the social things that you could go to and see people and do stuff with that has, other than now we're getting some MRC lunches, there's just not a lot of things for people to do, and people have to have social interaction in person. I'm glad to see they got Bourbon's Club rescheduled, so that's a good sign that there are things that are starting to happen, even though that's going to be on a much smaller basis than usual. But I would just, try to see what we can do for people's mental health and for their general well-being, and to keep their mental health status as high as possible. Get out there and try to do things and interact with people, and if anybody has any bright ideas on things to do, you can bet they're probably going to be well attended because people want to go to things and do things, especially me, so thank you.
I think there have been a lot of events I've seen as far as races and walks and fundraisers and all kinds of things going on outside. I think even our fall programs is opening up. I saw pickleball sign up and a few other sign-ups for our Parks and Rec, so I don't know what other things are going on. And everybody else is following their own. They're not coming from within here.
Well, I think we're still gonna do the spooktacular with some adjustments. I was reading about that.
We are, I just read the plan yesterday, and I think our internal committee has approved it. They've made a lot of changes to it, so they're limiting the attendance over the 5 nights to maximum of 240. And instead of having stations along the way, there's just some activities that are spread out, and they'll ensure the social distancing, and then the sponsors that have worked that in the past will have a goodie bag that they'll hand people as they leave. So they've rearranged it to make it a lot safer, much like we've done already with the zoo for zoo attendance. So that one's in the works, and as Commissioner Hattasol said, we have approved the Veterans Day Parade permit, subject to the Health Department's approval of their plan. We are still reviewing their program. They've requested to have a small program in the auditorium. That one's still being reviewed. And then we are also moving forward with a holiday parade plan. Again, what I've tried to tell a lot of these folks, it's just going to depend on what the virus is doing at the time and whether or not all of them will have to have the approval by the health department for the gathering. And that'll be subject to their determination if situations erode, if you will. But we are looking at a virtual tree lighting ceremony, and ideally have that on for the parade. The parade will be ride only, no walkers, and none of the parades can hand out anything. So those are some of the modifications we're making, and then some other rules that are developing for that as well.
Yeah, I've got a list of those events for commissioner comments, the Festival of Trees, that they're doing that, but they're doing it the way I'd recommended years ago. They're gonna put the trees out in various businesses, and then there'll be a walking tour, and you can go through and then vote, and you can still, auction a tree if you wanna buy one. And then, of course, the parades go no walkers, but still bicycle people, which is good, and that'll speed it up anyway. It's too bad we can't have the walkers, but it'll go a little bit faster. You won't have gaps in it, so that'll work pretty well. And then the Festival of Lights, they're going to do what they're calling an online illumination ceremony. I think that's still for the 27th now. Are we going to try the same thing for the mayor's tree? Or?
Yeah, we're going to observe how theirs go and hopefully learn from it. Hopefully we can get some better participation and maybe even broadcast some of it.
And then I assume, that Thomas Signs is gonna help us put the Johnny Call lights back up, and the hat and all that.
I don't know that detail, but
I think I asked Eddie about that. That's supposed to still happen. Hopefully we'll get that done before.
one of the things for the holiday parade that isn't necessarily there for the Veterans Day Parade, because the students are still here, and the Air Force and Army ROTC programs help staff that event tremendously. And we won't have students here for the holiday parade, and we're going to need some more volunteers, and so you'll be hearing us put out some calls for volunteers to help with some of the heavy lifting that goes on to get ready for that.
What about Blue Earth Plaza? It just occurred to me.
So that's the Festival of Lights,
Festival of Lights.
and they're doing virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, they're gonna have all the, I met with them, they're gonna have, the same lights and everything, but of course we can't have the huge crowd down there for the lighting, so they're gonna do that. I think the idea is to film that in advance, and then that night they'll just show it because they don't want people, you know, showing up thinking it's gonna happen. But you can still drive through there, and they'll have the music, and, you know, people can wander through between, you know, the 27th and New Year's.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and all the lights will still be there. It should be fun. I think that, you know, a lot of citizens out there need to think about contributing to Whoville, because of course the whole weight of that cost has been basically the hotels. And we know their business hasn't been good. And so it's time for, you know, a lot of other folks to step up and kick in a few dollars if you can. I mean, not huge amounts, but, you know, $5 works. You know, you donate to Whoville, make this thing happen. It's the 8th year, so.
I follow that up to, in addition to the zoo doing the spooktacular, sounds like Aggieville and West Loop are also doing something for Halloween. And I did have a question earlier about, I saw in the last, I don't know, maybe the last 2 weeks or week, that the economic recovery and sales tax page went up on the city website. And I was wondering about different presentations, or what the city may be doing, on what's on your radar as far as explaining that and getting that page out there.
Yeah, we've got some speaking engagements. We're certainly open to more, and we're trying to get that word out that we're available. I've got at least 2 scheduled myself, and I know Jason, I think, has 1 as well.
It seems like, what, we have 10 days left before register, or less, before people can't register to vote, and
Right.
it's coming fast, less than 3 weeks before, 2 Tuesday meetings before, with the second Tuesday meeting will be election night. So, there's just a lot of information, I guess, to get out to people.
Good point.
Yeah, I've seen a few things on the city website, but my question, I was going to ask earlier was, what's going on with Genesis? Are they doing anything?
Slowly, I did, there hasn't been as many workers, and our code department certainly isn't getting called as often, but there are a few people working on it, and so they're making some slow progress.
Do we have any requirements on when a date needs to be completed or anything like that for that particular project? It feels like it's been going on for years.
Yeah. So the permit has a timeline. I think it's been, it can be renewed several times. And I don't have I don't know what the current permit deadline is, but it's not an onerous process. I mean, they basically, if they've abandoned it, that's a bigger issue. But there have been, again, slow progress in different areas of the facility.
I know, that's what it seems like it's been forever. Other than that, I don't think I have too much else. I don't know topics for city, county. If anybody has it, definitely send it to Ron. I know there's been Rich Varga was talking about everything that's going on with elections, so I would be interested in knowing more about that, or if the public is more interested in that. But we'll certainly email you things. There are other topics for that. So I guess we're done early unless there's any other discussions about anything or updating on anything. You can take a brief break for 10 minutes.
Yeah, the bottom, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I used it earlier. Not getting the, Zoom can't see the presentation.
Did you log in here?
Yeah, I got Zoom up, but they should be able to see what's on the screen right now. All there's, well, maybe if we start video, maybe we're gonna see the junk right there, but let's see. Where's Rich? So they're up there, but, I'm not sure the presentations. So they can't see the video of who's talking. Stop our video and that'll turn that junk off. There we go. So there's 7 people out there. Are you trying to pull up your presentation?
Yeah, I can do it anytime though, if you need this.
No, I'm just trying to figure out why we can't get. Hey, Rich, can you hear me? We may have to unmute him. You're on mute, Rich. Let's see if we can unmute you. Hold on a second.
Okay, can you hear me now?
All right. What can you see on your screen?
It says City Hall, City of.
Okay. Now what do you see?
Same thing? Can I see the people across the top?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna run and grab my earbuds. I'll be right back.
All right. Now can we get one presentation? See who else is in the way, the seven participants. So they're all on mute. Tammy. We can go ahead and unmute them unless. Actually, no one, they made for, one of the agenda items is approving the bylaw changes to the airport advisory. So they may need to.
Whenever you're ready.
They can hear us, but they can't see it, which I think will be okay. What's that camera? Is that's ours? Yeah, that's us. Okay, let's go to.
Kind of need him to go.
Yeah. Oh, go turn his camera off.
You want to put him in the waiting room?
Yeah. Okay, Mayor, we're ready to start when you are.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everyone. This is October 6th, 7 o'clock. It's our City Commission Legislative Meeting. Please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We accepted public comment in writing prior to tonight's meeting, and any comments submitted were received to all members of the City Commission. We will announce for each item whether we receive public comment or not on that item. We are also allowing public comment from those attending the meeting in person tonight. Each public comment should comply with our city public comment rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address for the record and for those listening or watching this evening. With that said, our first item is the proclamation, and Brenda Wolf will be reading the proclamation for the National Physician Assistant Week. And go ahead.
Whereas quality, cost-effective, and accessible patient-centered healthcare provided by physician assistants contributes to the well-being and quality of life for all patients of Manhattan, Kansas, and PAs are academically and clinically prepared medical professionals who diagnose illness, develop and manage treatment plans, and often serve as a patient's principal healthcare provider. PAs are often the first point of contact for many patients and play a vital role in helping them understand their medical needs and empower them to become effective advocates for their own health. And a valuable asset to the medical team, PAs enhance the delivery of high-quality health care for patients, often in medically underserved and rural areas. PAs have earned the respect of the general public for their dedication and contributions to people's lives, and for their commitment to team-based care and ensure delivery of effective and efficient healthcare services. Now therefore I, Yusha Reddy, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, do hereby proclaim October 6th through 12th of 2020 as National Physician Assistant Week throughout Manhattan, Kansas, and encourage all of our residents to recognize PAs for the significant impact they have made and continue to make in healthcare as a critical part of the healthcare team.
Thank you, Brenda. We do have Dr. Autumn Casido, the medical director, and Dr. Vivian Guevara, the academic admissions director from the Physician Assistant Program at Kansas State University. They will be making a few comments this evening. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Reddy, City Commissioners, and ladies and gentlemen who are present today. I am so excited to celebrate National PA Week. We are very excited about our PA program that's starting at Kansas State University. And you may not be aware, but throughout this national health crisis, 9.1 million patients were seen by PAs every single week. 9.1 million a week by physician assistants. They are invaluable, they are essential, they are needed for healthcare, and the physician assistants in this community have stepped up to the plate in the midst of this pandemic. They work harder, they work longer, they don't complain, they've come up with solutions. As you know, it's been up and down and crazy for healthcare people, and they have just done an amazing job. We wouldn't be able to survive this pandemic without them. So if you see a PA this week, you need to say thank you and tell them that you're appreciated, you're essential, you're invaluable. We know that only 1 out of 7 people in Kansas have a primary care physician. This is why it is so needed to have physician assistants to extend providers. The other thing is 95 out of the 105 counties in Kansas are medically underserved. This is the reason why we need a PA program in Manhattan, to create more PAs to fill that void. There's going to be a 30% increase in the number of PA physician slots available to be filled over the next 6 years. And we need to have the throughput to do so. And this program will allow that to happen. So thank a PA with you. If you see one, Dr. Guevara, thank you. Whoa, now.
Yes, look at that.
PAs are essential.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Guevara, did you want to make a few comments too?
I agree with what Dr. Casado said. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you. We are very excited about the PA program at Kansas State University. So if you graduate and you have a degree in being a physician's assistant, you have a job. That's how, and we really do appreciate everything they're doing on the front lines for our community and within the United States as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Dr. Casado. Surprise.
Okay, public comments. The public was allowed to submit public comments not related to an agenda item to the city's website or by emailing or calling city commissioners directly until 4 o'clock today. There were no general public comments this evening. In-person comments. For those wanting to make comments can do so at this time. Please state your name and address and speak to any items that are not on our agenda this evening. Yes, come on up.
Would I be allowed even though I didn't email in?
No, it's okay. You can come and just state your name and address and speak to us. That would be fine.
I think I'm far enough away, 6 foot away from everybody. My name is Stan Herman. I'm a lifetime resident of Manhattan, Kansas. My parents and grandparents are in the city cemetery. But I just want to say this and make a public comment about I'm planning to organize a class action lawsuit against the city of Manhattan about the flooding on Wildcat Creek. There is things that the city has done to exacerbate the flooding on Wildcat Creek, and I think it needs to be addressed publicly. I'm organizing a class action lawsuit against the city. I've talked to the law department down at the University of Kansas. They'd love to jump in to a lawsuit against the city of Manhattan about the flooding on Wildcat Creek because it's on the television. And there's things that the city should have done. Did the city inform all those businesses out there in Village Plaza Shopping Center that they're in the floodplain? Did the Sam Samurai get informed that he was in the floodplain when he built Village Plaza there? Those buildings that were torn down? I worked for Osborne Construction and we built the Village Plaza for Sam Samurai family. There was nothing said about it in the floodplain. The city has been issuing building permits for Wildcat Creek out there in the 10-year floodplain along Wildcat Creek. And the worst ones are the Law Enforcement Center and Home Depot, that's built in the floodplain. Home Depot was allowed to haul in 220,000 cubic feet of dirt to fill in their parking lot next to Wildcat Creek, which made the flooding worse all the way up there. The Optimus Park, they were allowed to scrape the dirt on the west side of Wildcat Creek along to make the channel of the Wildcat Creek only about 25 foot wide so they could level up their ball fields. The trouble is, those that do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. You need a historian on the city staff or consultant to tell you what the city history was. When the white settlers came to Manhattan here, they were told by the Kaw Indians, do not build where downtown is today. They said it floods. How did the Kaw Indians know that? 1849, there was a massive 100-year floodplain, and the Kansas River Valley was filled from bluff to bluff. And the Kaw Indians said, do not build where downtown is. No, they built where downtown is, and then the 51 flood, we had to get the Corps of Engineers in there to build the dike to stop the river, the Kansas River, from flooding Manhattan here. And in 1903, there was a major flood in Manhattan and the Blue River changed channels from Tuttle Creek Boulevard to where the Blue River is right now. We need historians to tell you what the history is. Where the Law Enforcement Center and Home Depot, I used to go hunting out there when I was in high school. Whenever Wildcat Creek flooded, it would run out into the agricultural field, into the cornfields. So there should have been a 50-foot stormwater culvert built into the bottom of Wildcat Creek to allow the water to run away fast without trees clogging up the waterway. And Fort Riley is amenable to building a flood control dam on their property to help stop the flooding from Wildcat Creek. Potawatomi County has 2 state lakes. Riley County doesn't have any state lakes. We should get the state lakes in Riley County to stop the flooding on Wildcat Creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. If you would like to email us some of those questions, we might be able to get back to you on some of them. This is an ongoing issue, I understand. Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and go on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Estabrook?
To liven things up a little bit, my last Wednesday, I believe, September 30th, I remember because it was my birthday, we went down and we signed the beams, a beam at the Douglas Center, and I just wanted to give a little update that the Douglas Community Recreation Center is scheduled on pace to be complete by the end of this year, potentially around the first of the year, and then the other 2 community centers, Anthony and Eisenhower, also look to be done in the mid to late spring of next year. So that is all I had to update. We're going to have a lot of indoor space in the next year and a half.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris?
I serve on the Flint Hills Regional Council. It's a collection of all of the cities and counties in a 7-county area. And we try to cooperate and work with each other on projects. So that group is having a retreat on the 16th, and I'll be attending that. And they have several large federal grants. One is with EPA to clean up contaminated sites in that 7-county area. And another one has to do with it's an EDA grant, Economic Development Administration, and it has more economic development orientation. And then there's several others, but they are participating in a Wamego Match Day 2 days from now, October 8th. So we would welcome anyone who wants to make a contribution to the Flint Hills Regional Council at the Wamego Match Day. I'm also serve on the Wildcat Creek Committee. It's called Resiliency Committee. We had not met since January, and there was a meeting last week finally, and it's an example of how COVID has thrown off a lot of regular meetings and regular events. The staff, the community development staff, prepared a list of 30 tasks, projects, but there weren't very many people at the meeting, and it was virtual, but it still is. So many of the items were, in my view, were action you take after a flood, and I am more interested in emphasizing before a flood takes place. What can we do to keep a flood from happening? So, but we are talking about, in the beginning we talked about having landlords give the tenant out on Garden Way a statement to sign that they understood that that property might flood that they're renting. And so McCullough Development has already done it, and they aren't waiting for us to. We're a year later now than we were. They aren't waiting. They've already done it, and hooray for them. They're one of the big property managers here in this community. It's to alert their tenants, taking care of them, and I think that's exemplary. We are talking about putting up some signs on city right-of-way that would call attention. This is when you go downtown, there's one of the stores, and there's a marker that says this is where the 1951 flood level was. Well, we're talking about putting up signs in some areas where the whatever year it was, flood height, as a way to call attention. Doesn't have to be the biggest sign in the world. When in Alaska, I went to some glaciers, and they have little signs on the way out, walk out to the glacier. 1953, this is where the glacier was, and you keep walking another half mile because it's melted. But those little signs are so instructive. The city administration, city manager, has scheduled a briefing for the city commission on Wildcat Creek Resiliency Committee on October 13th. That'll be our next work session. So stay tuned, I hope that we are able to really, so there was a Wildcat Creek Committee that lasted for 5 years until 2018 when it flooded again. And we said, well, we need to renew that committee. And that group had accomplished 8 of the 10 priorities. And so I'm interested in my goal, and I hope the committee's goal, is to generate some of those topics and priorities so that they are accomplished, so we can accomplish something. And we just heard from Mr. Herman, and I can't deal with all the issues he raised, but we have to continue chipping away. So in the past, we've been buying 3 or 4, the city has been buying 3 or 4 homes a year that have flooded. And this year, the word went out, we don't have the money to do it, so we're kind of suspending it for this year, but certainly it would be good to get it back on track in 2021. And I have to tell you, the flood maps keep changing. So back when some of these houses and subdivisions were built, there was no such thing as a floodplain back then. So now FEMA is doing it, like changing them every 5 years, I think. And that changes, our world every time they do that. So we're going to have to anticipate 10 or 15 years ahead and stop reacting with the 5-year increment. So just to tell you that that's coming up, I hope you'll be paying attention. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. Commissioner Hattisell? Commissioner Butler?
Yeah, I'm probably ahead of Walmart this year. I've got my Grinch tie on for Christmas. I've got a Festival of Lights designer mask, because I guess these things are going to be in for the holiday season. And I wanted to just give an update on some of the holiday events. People are concerned, what are we going to do? We're going to have our holiday events for the city of Manhattan. We're optimistic. We've got to get the shoppers in here to spend money and have fun, but we're also going to do it safely. And so one of the first events coming up is going to be the Festival of Trees. Now, normally there was an auction. This year, the Festival of Trees, which is to benefit the Flint Hills Volunteer Center, will be an online auction held on Thursday, November 19th. But prior to that, you'll be able to see the trees, the wreaths, the various things that you'll be bidding on are going to be placed in the stores downtown and in the mall. So you can walk around between November 10th and the 19th, go to the various shops and view them. And that, I think, will be a entertaining event, and that's always been a great event each year. The next event is going to be the Festival of Lights, and of course we've got the largest tree in Kansas down there in Blue Earth Plaza, and all the beautiful lights, and they'll be put in place. But this year it'll be an online illumination ceremony, because we really don't want to have 3,000-4,000 people packed into Blue Earth Plaza. So it'll be an online event, but you can still visit Blue Earth Plaza anytime, wander through there. They'll have the music. You can drive through with your car, you can walk, and all those wonderful lights will be out there. And then later on Friday, December 4th at 5:30 p.m., we'll have the annual Christmas lighted parade. And this year there'll be one change. We used to have walking groups. We were sponsoring a walking float, but we're going to eliminate that category this year. But you can still bike decorate your truck and things like that. So I encourage everyone to take part in that, and I think the city commission will be there on the fire truck. We'll decorate that again this year, providing the fire department can keep it running. This old engine number 1's got some miles on it. So we'll be doing that, and of course, the tree lighting in Triangle Park was also going to have to be a virtual event this year because we don't want to crowd a lot of people in there. So, holiday season, it's going to move forward with a few changes, and it's going to be done safely, and I hope everybody participates.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, voting registration, the deadline is October 13th, next Tuesday. If your name has changed, or your address has changed, or you're not sure if you are registered, please do so. Just check, register real quick. It doesn't take very long, especially for students or anybody that's just recently moved to Manhattan. Rich Vargo gave an update yesterday to the Riley County Commissioners, and they've already started advance voting for military, so they already sent out ballots for that. Advance voting will start on October 14th, right after October 13th, the last day to register is finished. There will be 2 areas where you can go in person to vote, a K-State Union and the county office, and on their websites they will have their hours. They vary, so please check if you're going to go vote in person. I believe at the K-State Union it's on the 2nd floor in Bluemont Room. There will be a drop box at West Loop Shopping Center, and in some of the smaller cities there will also be a different drop box, and he will give more updates as we get closer to that date. So just make sure that you're on top of where you are for the voting, and you can also see your sample ballot. If you're not sure, you go in and you're like, you didn't realize all of those things were going to be on there. Just make sure you take a quick look at it online, and you have an idea of what to expect when you go in, and please feel free to ask anybody any questions you have before you go in, so you are being informed on what you are voting for. Census deadline has moved to October 31st, and I don't know if you can still do a self-response, but I know there's a lot of people knocking on doors, whether they're campaigning as candidates or other folks. But if you see the census now, they're walking the neighborhoods, and if they knock on your door, please open and respond to the census. It helps us with our roads, our school funding, our redistricting. It helps how many representatives you're going to have at the federal level, whether it's going to be 4 congressional districts or 3 congressional districts, what kind of federal funds we're going to have. Anytime we apply for things, we need a matching fund, and sometimes federal money looks at the population. And if you have 50,000 or more, you're eligible for different funds. If you have 50,000 and less, you're eligible for fewer funds. So we would like to make sure everybody gets a chance to take the census. And flu shots are available at the Riley County Health Department, as well as your primary care physician, so make sure you get your flu shots. And I really want to give kudos to our community. We are trending the right way in our trend line for COVID. Our percentage positive has been decreasing incrementally. At the university, at Lafayette, they're seeing that with their students, and we're seeing it in our community. And I really appreciate everybody that has stepped up, decided to, yes, face masks are okay, and are wearing them. I see them wherever I go. People are socially distancing, they're washing their hands. This is helping our schools stay open. It's keeping our community healthy. When you hear Governor Kelly and Dr. Norman talk and give their press conferences, you know that the counties around us are not doing as well as we are. And we want to make sure we are continuing that trend, if not decreasing, and going lower in our percent positives. With that being said, if you do have symptoms, or if you think there's going to be a lot more testing for asymptomatic folks as well, please just get checked. Sometimes carriers that are asymptomatic, don't feel like they're going to be hurting anybody, but you just don't know if you have COVID or not. But I really just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to the City of Manhattan for stepping up and taking care of our community. Okay, with that said, we'll move on to our commissioner comments. Commissioner comments are done. What am I saying? Consent agenda. So commissioners need, we have a strategic plan on the consent agenda for item D, and that needs 2 city commissioners. Myself, as well as Commissioner Estabrook, had volunteered to serve on that selection process. The items on the consent agenda are those of routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda. Does the commission have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? I did want Ron to speak to item J, if you could, on the Smith Channel improvements, since there's been an amendment in how those portions are going to be divided.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Item J is the Smith Channel improvements. You might recall the commission previously approved a benefit district via public hearing. We proceeded with the design and bidding of that project. The bids came in higher than the petition, or excuse me, than the benefit district had allocated. So the item before you tonight is to consider modifying the original resolutions by passing a new resolution to change the scope of the threshold, if you will, the dollar threshold of the project. We are recommending that we keep the benefiting properties, the private properties, at the previous level of financial contribution, so a maximum of $65,000 by all of the properties combined, and that the city at large pick up the extra expense. So if what was a 50-50 participation, we're recommending be 35% adjacent property owners and 65% city at large. That's roughly $65,000 from the benefiting properties and about $85,000 from the city at large, approximately. So if you're not in favor of that, then that's our recommendation, that we do that and to modify the resolution accordingly and award a contract to Juniman Excavation of Hanover, Kansas in the amount of $139,370.
Right. So it doesn't change theirs, and we're going to pick up the rest of it. On this particular agenda item, consent agenda item, there was, I think I received 3 emails on it, just so the public is aware about it as well, pros and cons to it. With that said, any commissioner comments on the consent agenda? Yes.
On Commissioner Hattasol, the item G, which is the lime sludge pond thing, I just want to bitch and moan for a little bit about that. We decided to change how we get some of the drainage water, get it out of the ditch in front of Hobby Lobby and send it over to the north, toward and then underneath the levee over there. And now that we've gotten into that project, now KDHE says we now have to spend $3 million to change the way we get rid of the water and the fluid and the slime ponds. This is what's wrong with the government today, is back in the spring, or last fall, the child care supervising people decided they wanted to change some interpretation of a rule, and that did away with our Zoo Sprouts program because they changed it and made it too hard to keep that program in business. Now KDHE decides that they're going to reinterpret something, and now we've got to spend $3.5 million to get the lime sludge liquid that used to just go right into the ditch. Now we've got to treat it. And so when people start complaining about their water bill, some of it's because we're robbing the pot to pay for other stuff, but we need to let people know that it's unelected bureaucrats down there at the KDHE and stuff that's helping to muck up things and make it harder for us to do projects, and then make us spend $3.5 million for something that's been fine for the last 20, 30 years. That just seems wrong to me. And I don't know who, the problem is those guys, KDHE doesn't answer to anybody apparently. There's probably a secretary who's there for a couple years and then gone, but that's the kind of thing that's just out of control, bureaucratic government that's reinterpreting stuff and making it just too hard for businesses to stay in business, for governments to operate, and for people to enjoy their livelihood. And I'm just tired of that stuff.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, Commissioner Estabrook, I will join in on the I guess, complaining session here, but want to also note that item D is what I'm speaking to, the strategic plan that's in the consent agenda. As I joined the commission in January and kind of learned how things are functioning, we went through the goal session. We've had this pandemic, we've had lots of scrutiny into our budget and where the priorities rely, and I think it's been surprising to me that we haven't had a strategic plan in place before, but just as you look at that item, the first in that memo is the first line of that memo with item D is the City of Manhattan does not have a current strategic plan guiding organization and community priorities. And that is going to change if this goes through, and that is well overdue in my opinion, but this will help going forward with budget priorities, all kinds of items that we've dealt with, and it's well past due. I just wanted to not necessarily complain, but also say that I'm glad it's here. The timeline, it looks like proposed, if that is accepted, would be through November into December, where there's community engagement during the first of the year and up until June. So it's not just on us to be engaged, it would require the community to be engaged to make that be a successful plan, and I think that can potentially start today and tomorrow if this passes, the RFQ goes out. So it's a new day with strategic planning, which is not the most exciting thing to people, but it's exciting to me.
Other comments?
I would just offer that in the city's defense, this last year we probably may have been weaker with regard to planning, but in the first couple of years I was on the commission, we always had a retreat with goal setting and objectives, and we set what the priorities were, and we also were able to accommodate the surprises that come along, it seems to me. And COVID has been a deal breaker, and if that's the only year you have a reference, then you're right, it's been chaotic. And so I would just say that setting goals and objectives is a part of the strategic planning, and I too am interested in developing a strategic plan. But we have not been completely rudderless in the past either. We have had goals, so just to say that much.
We've done well. Did you want to speak to the G or anything? What Commissioner Hattasol had spoken to?
I have a completely different take on the lagoon. In let's see, the item is the anyway, Tuttle Creek Boulevard North Ditch, design for the water treatment plant sludge lagoon. There's another component in there that has to do with redirecting the water that comes off of down the hill on Bertrand under Highway 24 and goes, it's been already diverted evidently to the Casement, at Casement and Hayes. There's there's a place with a gate on it where we can control the water, so we can keep the backup of the Kansas River flooding from coming into the city, but we also are going to be pushing water out of that area, this Bertrand area now, over to that Casement gate and on the back side of the levee. And that won't be a problem in most situations, but it can be a problem. It's a really delicate balance, and I just want to be sure that we know exactly what we're doing as we start diverting the natural flow of water And so I'm going to support this because I think we have to do these things. But just like the Wildcat Creek, they're just, we work ourselves into some real problems and they affect people. And I just want us to make sure that we're always doing the right thing.
Seem to be talking a lot about flooding and water this tonight. Thank you. If there are no other commissioner comments, yes.
Yeah, on that item G, I think, Mark is right about that, but of course you can't vote no because then KDHE comes down, fines the city for all kinds of environmental stuff, so there really isn't any way to get past it, and it is a bad situation. I think the Smith Channel thing, changing it so the city pays 65% is a good compromise on the increase, so I don't have a problem with that. On item D on the strategic plan, it should come as no surprise. I've always said that I felt like the administration of the city should do the strategic plan and we should not spend money on a consultant. I mean, that's why we hire city managers, assistant managers and all that. We got a high-paid staff and that high-paid staff should write the strategic plan. And so I'm not going to support item D.
Okay, thank you. Any public comments on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Like I said, I did receive 3 on one of the item, the Smith one. Other than that, there were no other comments via email or phone calls. With that, I'd like a motion, please, with the strategic plan having the 2 commissioners on there as well.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as distributed with the notation that Yusha Reddy and Aaron Estabrook will serve on the strategic plan selection committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Brenda, please call the roll.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes, except item D, which is a no.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 with the exception of consent item D, which carries 4-1.
Thank you. On to our general agenda. First item is considering economic development agreement, industrial revenue bonds, and real estate option for BevHub LLC. Presenters this evening are Jason Hilgers, our Deputy City Manager, Darren Solden, Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce, Jennifer Sork of BevHub, and Lee Eaton of BevHub. Hi, Jason.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. It'll probably just be me. This is second consideration. I'm going to run
Sure.
through the slides. If you have questions, people are definitely here for you all to call on if we can answer anything in addition to what we covered tonight or a couple weeks ago. BevHub, just to remind you all, they're a one-stop shop for co-packing needs. They do some product processing and canning, labeling, shipping, deal with coffees and juices and teas. They have an existing facility in Wichita, and they'd like to expand to the second production facility here in Manhattan. This will all take place out at the business park by the airport, former Tallgrass Brewery building. Quite a bit of investment and some job creation we'll cover here in a second. 37 jobs projected in the first 3 years. They have specialized training required for many of their jobs, and they plan to hire local graduates and potential internships as well. Their founder investors, growth opportunities in Kansas. They're very entrepreneurial, very innovative as well. They have a nutrition staff working with K-State, looking at value-added food labs. The project site, just an overview. The old Tallgrass Brewery facility is lot 28. 27 and 29 are the adjacent lots just right off Wildcat Creek Road. Those are part of the deal. They'd like to option those lots. We've given them a 5-year option. If they execute the option, they will compensate the city at the normal rate at $13,500 an acre in the park. Covered that. Just a summary again, 37 jobs, $6,500 per job, so $240,500 is the total package that we have put together. They have about a $900,000 expansion that they'd like to do on the facility. The expansion is where the IRBs and the abatement come into play. It's roughly $35,000 a year on the abatement for a 10-year period. And as I mentioned, the option on the 2 lots. The IRBs that are on your part of your packet this evening, an action item, basically expresses your intent to support that, and it'll take a process then to go ahead and issue IRBs and pursue that tax abatement. Just a review again of those 37 jobs and the average hourly wage that we have proposed here. 18 obviously in that first year, 19 in the third year. They received a very good score by way of their salary ranges. That goes into a larger score then that we'll highlight here as far as a community fit. It takes into account base wage, return on investment, community fit score, and that benefit score. So usually between 10 and 15 is a good score. They're close to 12. It ranks right in there with other applicants the city has funded in the past. I highlighted this the first time. I would highlight it again, a $25 million investment going into this facility. A lot of that is in equipment to get this facility up and running and producing a product. The cost benefit for the city, total benefits just under $600,000. City's cost in terms of abatement and the ED incentive package at $346, so we have a net benefit just over $250,000. The economic development agreement basically provides those incentives for that job creation, so we'll monitor that after their first full year of operation. We'll monitor that then for the next 3, 4, 5 years to pay and report that back to you all on an annual basis. The IRB and tax abatement details we've highlighted in summary, and again you have an action item this evening to execute that and move that forward. That 8.5 acres in lots 27 and 29, as I mentioned, at 13.5 an acre, that's highlighted in the real estate option agreement as well. As I mentioned, we're here for questions. This is second consideration. First consideration was mid-September. We're here to answer any questions that may have arisen here in the last 3 weeks. If not, I do think BevHub is ready to get started. They're poised and ready to start investing in our community and in the site. So, Mayor, Commissioners, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Questions for Jason or BevHub?
Yeah, Mark Hattisall here. I was wondering, the county and the school district have to sign off on the tax abatement too, right?
We have noticed them of the meeting tonight, so they're aware that the property could be awarded that abatement.
So we have to do our thing first before they can.
They can't veto or appeal it. They could show up this evening and make an argument to you all not to do it, but they cannot veto.
Well, they can't stop it.
No.
No,
Okay.
it's not like a TIF. So
Okay, so the state, obviously they're on board too with.
They have to go, we have to go through a process with the
With them.
state to get them to award this. It's not a guarantee, but the avenue to get there is through the IRBs and the application that the city and the applicant will make for that exemption.
So finally, the city's the big dog in the room.
Yes.
For once, I like that.
Other questions for Jason?
We have talked, and I don't want to just ask this at the very end, but we have talked over the months about businesses that are doing the dark store thing, and we had talked about putting some kind of a provision or condition in the awards for economic development that would give some kind of a commitment from the applicant not to, that they, we did not expect them to be able to do that. I don't know, an easier way to say that. Is there, but I didn't see, there's a paragraph that's a mystery to me in here. So it could be that it's in that, there's something in that paragraph, but I doubt that anywhere you're talking about the dark store theory. So I'd just like a response of some kind.
And as we've talked about before, it's a theory. It is not being necessarily upheld and implemented, It's a legal issue. People are fighting their valuation. There's an argument in court. We've talked to you all about how difficult that is to write into agreements that they don't have the right to challenge the value of their property. That's a difficult thing to tell anybody, because by state law, they have every right to challenge their property value. That is not a process that the city is involved in. That is a process the county appraiser is involved in. So it's difficult for we as a government entity to tell a private citizen or company they can't challenge their property value. That being said, dark store theory doesn't really apply in this circumstance. That theory is more about a Walmart or a Home Depot, which generates sales. That the theory is that value should be much lower than what the county appraiser is placing on that property. This doesn't have the same approach if they were going to pursue it. Bill Frost wrote an email back to Ron today about that topic, and he expressed the same, and that's really what I'm trying to repeat here is what he expressed. We don't envision, and it's not anticipated, and it would be contrary to the dark store theory that's being debated in the public right now. But I do think we got to come back to everyone has a right to challenge their property value placed on your home, on your business by the county appraiser. There is a formal process to challenge that. For the city to tell an owner they can't is problematic.
I have a question. Sorry, Linda, to interrupt. Along the same lines, Ron had pointed me to number 7 on page 4, where they can't go against a property valuation of certain dates and such. I think the argument that we can't put that into a clause is appropriate unless they are getting IRBs, the sales tax abatements, property tax abatements and such. So they are receiving extra benefits that a private owner or another organization may not be. So I think we had that discussion, and I'm sure that's what legislators are going to continue to discuss. But that is something where it's been brought up earlier when we were talking about legislation for the dark store theory or hypothetical lease fee, that if they are getting other kind of benefits from an economic development plan that others don't have the privy to do, they shouldn't be able to tap into all of these holes. I mean, there's already going to be tax credits and all of these other things corporations as such go to. But I think that in the future, that's something to at least be more clear about. I understand corporations, but with the dark store theory, landlords can do it, anybody can do it anymore. That's what they figured out, that I can do it, I guess, if I want with my own house. I don't know.
There are definitely avenues for individuals, businesses, and corporations to challenge their property values. If we wrote that provision in an agreement and the appraiser made an error, and we're sitting there telling that individual they can't challenge the error that was made. Errors happen.
Oh, I don't mean
there
error.
are times the appraisers, there's a value that comes out that is in error, and there's a process by which they can resolve that error. In this circumstance, we are granting them a 10-year tax abatement on that improvement. There is no logical reason why they would challenge their valuation, because they aren't paying taxes on that $900,000 improvement. They have an existing value of a property that's manufacturing. And Bill pointed out they haven't seen a manufacturing dark store theory case surface, because a lot of it has to do with the goods that are being sold in that building. Bill even pointed out that there even could be an argument that an empty building could actually have significant value, not the fact that it's being operated in. There's a theory that's being practiced. I don't disagree. And do we have to be cognizant and aware that if that theory is upheld, that property values may drop? Absolutely.
I think
We
it's
have
a
to be very
discussion.
aware of that.
Yeah, I think it's a discussion we need to have. in the near future. But sorry, Linda, I interrupted your train of thought.
No, I understand. I also understand. I think we were blocked before when we talked about it and said, oh, you can't do that. On the other hand, we have some benefits to pass out. And I think we're entitled to set some parameters, but it seems like that remains to be determined and doesn't apply now, and so we need to move on. I just wanted to ask about it because Home Depot here is going through a Board of Tax Appeals process, and their hearing has been postponed. And so and Menards did, which affected Pottawatomie County 1 in that case. But it depends on whether there are any changes in that process. If there are, you know, either you change the entire property tax landscape in the state, or we start trying to deal with it. And so I think some of it just remains to be seen. So I'm not going to belabor it. I just wanted to ask about it. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate that. I think the experience that Manhattan has had with incentive packages to businesses, we've addressed accountability and clawbacks throughout the years. And to me, if the governing body is more worried about the performance of the company and you want financial clawbacks in the event that you're going to extend benefits and things don't happen the way you'd like to see them, and you'd like to see money come back, meaning you have an interest in the property, you have liens that are associated with it, you have financial penalties, and you have personal guarantees. We've moved away from all of that because even with those, companies going out of business has resulted in $0 for the city. You go through a lot of legal jargon, a lot of negotiation to reach a point that at the end of the day, if that business stops operating, there's not a lot left for the city. It's a risk you take every time you extend economic development incentives. It's very difficult to write things in those agreements that we can all sit here today and forecast and contemplate to the point that we know we're getting that money back. They're replacing a building. They're replacing a tenant in a building that we gave incentives to that did not perform. There are others in that category, but there are a lot of really good examples of incentives the city's provided over the years to companies that have not only performed but outperformed. It's a risk every time. And it's difficult to write these things in a way that puts all of us in a non-risk situation. That is the general nature of the incentive packages.
I think sorry.
I was going to just chime in. Having said that, I do believe there is some language in Section 7 which speaks to the ability of if that value drops. So the risk that you have here is the $35,000 estimates you're abating every year for all the jurisdictions. So annually, that process has to be certified. And so if the value drops in significant enough below a benchmark, that's an automatic not eligible for the annual tax abatement. So every year we go through a certification process to ensure that everything's in order to apply for that annual exemption.
Okay. That makes more sense. Thank you. And I was also concerned like what happens after the 10 years, but that explains it to me. But I think part of our job is not that we have a good package. I trust our staff to do the right thing. Our job is also to hold people accountable because this is taxpayer money. And when we get phone calls, it's not about, oh, how wonderful a company is coming here. It's about, why are you giving them money? And so when we have to answer those questions, we also have to ask a lot of questions because there's this idea that we're just giving away things. And our goal is to make sure our community is vibrant and thriving and still being competitive with other communities. And we are using the taxpayer money in the best way possible to invest back into our community. But with that, there's going to be a lot of questions because we want to make sure we are being responsible in how we handle the businesses and the structures that we have in place. I think this is one of the first times where, since I've been on the commission, that I've even talking about property tax abatement. I don't think that's happened in the 7 years I've been here. It may have, I just don't remember. I remember IRBs and sales tax more so than property tax. But with that said, I'm glad that, is it Baker Tiller that did the assessment or the risk management, risk assessment? And I reviewed all of that. I think it looks good. When we say $35,000 or $38,000 a year, I think for property taxes, it needs to be clear that 12,000 of that is from the city, the 10,000 is from county property taxes, school is 15,000, and the state is 372. So it's not all just from one place. Is that right?
Yeah, that's accurate. It would also be worth mentioning that the $2.5 million asset they bought, they'll maintain paying property taxes to the city, the county, and the school district.
Right.
So we're just talking about the $900,000 expansion, and which isn't there today, and may not be there without the incentive.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the whole but-for of economic development and the package that we're putting together here. Yeah, it's not revenue we're receiving today. We are receiving the $2.5 million valuation in taxes, and we'll continue to.
And the 37 jobs, and is that in 3 years? Is that what it is, or?
Yep.
3 years, okay. Yeah, and they said 37 FTE, but that doesn't necessarily mean 37 people.
It could actually mean 50. Full-time
Because they're going to
equivalent.
do part-time as
Well-
the equivalent of 1 FTE.
Correct.
So what does that mean? Are they going to hire 3 people, 2 people for 1 FTE?
They'll have to expand on that, Mayor, but anytime somebody says an FTE, it's basically a position of 2,000 plus hours in a year.
Okay,
It could be 3 people
yeah,
fulfilling 2,000 hours in a year. In our calculation, when somebody proposes an FTE, it's somebody working at that position for those 2,000 hours. And if it takes 3 people to get to 2,000 hours, then that's an FTE.
okay. Because they have, I think, like operations manager at 40, and the lowest is $16 for shipping and receiving. So they can have up to 40 or 50 people, and that might equal out to be 37 FTEs. Is that right?
Possibly.
Is that what
Yep.
I'm thinking? And hopefully they're getting health care benefits and such as well in that process. But I
Yeah.
did like the risk assessment. There was like, they said 1.3% is good, and we were at 3 point something, 3.47 on return on investment. The county is at 1.65. The school district does 4.42, and the state is at 4.45. So that's good. I think from everything I've read, it seems like it's something that not that bad of a risk to take. So,
Yeah, as we mentioned last time, I think the Chamber and BevHub have done a great job providing us the data, crunching the numbers and evaluating the company. 37 new jobs over the next 3 years, $25 million investment in equipment, creating a hub for canning and co-packing. These are the types of jobs and companies we want to bring to Manhattan.
and they already have one in Wichita, so there is
They do.
some success already there. So it's not something brand new, so that's good. Are there any comments from BevHub or anybody else from the chamber that wants to speak to this item?
As far as I
wanna
knew,
make
they were.
one
Sorry.
comment on this. I'm not concerned at all about this dark store theory and all of that. If you look at how this tax abatement thing was designed, we did it with Civics Plus first about several years ago. And the idea is you're never going backwards on your property tax if you just abate the improvements. So you're not hurting anyone, the school district or the county or anyone. All you're doing is delaying an increase in the property tax by about 10 years. And there's always going to be a risk, as Jason said, whenever you do this. But remember, the thing here was not to get this company in here to pay property tax, it was to create jobs. That's what it was all about, and this is a good package. So it's one of the better ones I've seen, and I know we've had some good successes and a few failures, but I think this one is on the road to success. I'm 100% for it.
Hadisall here. Just to give you guys an idea, based on how much my office condominium is valued at and how much taxes I pay, parlay that to the 2 or whatever million that they're paid for the property, they're going to be paying $100,000 a year in property tax for the current, just the current building before improvements. And I think is all of that equipment, the state passed all equipment is tax exempt going forward. So they're not going to have to pay property tax on the $22 million worth of equipment. But yeah, if you're thinking, oh, they're not going to pay any property tax, if anybody complains, tell them, no, they're still paying $100 grand in property taxes based on a $2 million commercial building. And so that's the money that's still coming in no matter what. We're missing out on the 10 or 15, 20,000 a year for a few years. The community and the state is missing out on 15,000 a year in those $900,000 worth of improvements or so, or whatever that would relate to. So it's not like they're not paying anything. They're still paying a bunch, and they're going to bitch and moan when they get their property tax bill come June and December, just like the rest of us.
Okay, other questions? Comments from the Bev Hub or from Chamber or anybody else on this particular item?
Go ahead, Darren.
Okay. Oh, come on up, Darren. Please just state your name.
Thank you, Mayor. Darren Solden, Economic Development Director of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Just wanted to comment again, as I did a couple weeks ago, that this project, especially in this time as we deal with COVID and other challenges, is a great fit for the strategy of the Chamber and our economic development efforts. The job creation component, obviously, as we just talked about, the talent piece, whether it's hiring the potential to hire folks transitioning from Fort Riley or K-State students, or create other opportunities with training in our area, entrepreneurship, being able to keep a Kansas entrepreneur at home and allow that person an opportunity and that company an opportunity to grow here in Kansas, and then innovation. The fact that they're working with Kansas State University is really, really exciting. And then to kind of round that all out, our fifth strategic pillar, the recovery from our current situation. We need to continue to have these types of projects and create opportunities that create jobs, attract and retain talent, and drive entrepreneurship and innovation. So all in all, a very good project in our minds, and just want to take the opportunity also to thank Jason and city staff for their work on this. Obviously play such an integral role in this effort, and are great partners as we work together on these types of projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate it. Any other comments?
Mayor, we do need to hold a formal public hearing on the tax abatement.
All right.
And so we have duly noticed the taxing entities, the school district in Riley County and the state, and also published this public hearing. We also performed through a contractor the benefit cost analysis that the statute requires. That was something you, I think, highlighted in the tax abatement benefit cost ratio, where I think the key line was all of the taxing entities have a positive benefit to cost ratio in excess of the desired 1.3, and as you indicated, they were in the 3 to 4 range for everybody. Riley County has a 1.65, but even then it's a 7% return on investment for them at the lowest rating. So we would recommend approval, but we do recommend you have a public hearing.
Sure. So do I open it up for public hearing?
Yes.
We are open for public hearing on this Bev Hub LLC agenda. So I don't see anyone, and I didn't receive any written comments or any feedback. Is there a certain number of minutes I need to keep it open, or do I close?
No, you can close it.
Okay. So seeing no public hearing comments, I will be closing public hearing, bringing it back to the City Commission.
Okay, it's Commissioner Butler. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we approve and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute an economic development agreement and real estate option agreement in the Manhattan Business Park, and approve resolution number 100620B, authorizing industrial revenue bonds and a tax abatement for an expansion for Bev Hub LLC.
Commissioner Hattasol, second.
Great. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes, and I would like to say that I think this is a great economic opportunity for our city. It's easier to award the economic development money this time, and so our effort, our energy has been focused on taxes, but I don't think that's negative. That's on us. We need to do this kind of self-examining. And so not to detract from the enthusiasm for the project and the great having 37 jobs for the next 20 years here in our community, and the fact that with the purchase of the 2 extra lots, it's encouraging that they're looking to expand. So good things. Thank you.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes, and I welcome you to Manhattan, and I'm glad that you've ditched the Washburn mask, and we'll get you a K-State one.
Mayor Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Turn myself off. Next general agenda item is consider first reading of charter ordinance regarding process for public improvement contracts. Dennis Morstall, our Assistant City Manager, and Katie Jackson, our City Attorney, will be presenting this evening. Hi, Dennis.
Good evening, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Butler and Commissioners. Glad to be before you on your last agenda item this evening. We got more of what's an internal process, but it impacts a lot of businesses in the community as we look about how we do public improvements. And so as we outlined, the City Attorney and I will both be doing this presentation, and I will turn it over to Katie Jackson, City Attorney, to start with the background for you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I will provide some background tonight on the charter ordinance that, as Dennis said, tonight we're considering proposed changes to charter ordinance number 44. Charter ordinance number 44 exempts the city from a state statute that relates to first-class cities doing public improvements over the amount of $2,000. And this state law provides a competitive bid process that every city must follow. But because the statute is not uniform, Manhattan has, like most first-class cities, chartered out of it. And when you charter out of the statute, you're saying that the statute no longer applies within your city. And then you provide through ordinance what are called substitute or additional provisions. So that's what a charter ordinance does. In this case, we first chartered out of the statute in 1980. And at that time, we set the dollar amount at around $10,000, and we added a little more flexibility to the way that we contracted for public improvements. The statute defines public improvements as any change to public infrastructure that is not repair or maintenance. So it's going to be your larger scale projects that you see that come to the commission. Vertical builds, new roads, major projects like that, major stormwater and water projects. Anything that's repair or maintenance is not subject to the statute. So in 1980, we first chartered out of it, and in 2008, we repealed the 1980 ordinance and adopted this version of the ordinance. At that time, we raised the dollar amount to $20,000. So now the process, the charter ordinance applies to any project or for a public improvement that exceeds $20,000. Also in 2008, we added some more alternatives for how we contract for public improvement projects. So we added the ability to do design build and any other type of design process that we come up with. So since that time, we've gotten more into design build, construction manager at risk, and other alternative delivery formats. So that has been really effective for the city. So what we're doing tonight is considering an increase to the change that Dennis is going to talk about. But I wanted to note, just for a framework, and Dennis might cover this as well, but as a framework, the charter ordinance, just as a reminder, only applies to the construction, reconstruction of public improvements. Dennis is going to talk about how it fits in tonight with the purchasing policy and those other things we do. But just bear in mind when you're thinking about the charter ordinance, this aspect of it is one niche of what we do, and it's just the construction of public improvements. It's not all the other goods or services that we purchase through the city. But it is important because the dollar amount in here is the first step in making a change to other things we purchase, which Dennis is going to talk about. But bear in mind, I just don't want us to mix up that this is like a purchasing policy or some kind of broader purchasing. It really does only relate to the process to contract for public improvements.
Great, thank you, Katie. And as she alluded, really this is kind of a 3-document process, and this is just the first one to really set part of the framework that kind of guides the other 2 that we'll bring to you. What she highlighted there in bullet 2 is about it does not apply to repair and maintenance of public improvements. We have brought these items to you in the past in different regards, but as we are going through, since it's been since 2008 that we've had this look at our purchasing documents, the other 2 resolutions we'll talk about, but primarily the charter ordinance, thinking about all the work we've done, basically in the last year, we've done over $30 million in some improvements and things. And so as we've been working through our processes internally, we've identified a few things that we want to bring for you, some changes. And so really there's 4 things on the proposal that we're going to bring for you tonight. One is talking about increasing the city manager's purchasing authority from that $20,000 up to the $75,000. Also, there's a couple of components within the charter ordinance and then some of our other subsequent documents where how the standard by which we award a bid is determined or how it's communicated. And so right now, it is on the lowest and best responsible bidder. As we've gone through our documents and had some discussions with some of our past bid processes, we realize there's some important nuances to that about having it be the lowest responsible bidder who submits a responsive bid. And the responsive bid has been some of the things in question in the past. Also, there's a provision in here that you're probably familiar with where when we bring you a project, every project has an estimated cost, a probable expense. And so the charter ordinance has been pretty prescriptive that it has to be under the oath of the city engineer that provides those estimates. And so that does not allow, what we want to say is let's modify that a little bit and allow a department head or a consultant to also be able to provide that estimate under the authority of the city manager's appointment. So that's a nuance in there as well. And then one of the processes that we have in place is that if all the bids come in and they exceed the estimated probable cost, then we have a process in place over 7% that do we reject it? Do we bring it back to you? We want to make sure that we have a bit more language and leeway that we can still go forward with some projects, even though the bids may have exceeded the estimated cost, but in a manner that really does have some outlined rationale from city staff, whether it be if we have to do something for a project schedule, if there's some federal state regulations that it's important to go forward, or if there's some market conditions out there. And so what we found is as we look through this document and some other documents, these are kind of the 4 things that we think will help improve our purchasing process for public improvements, as well as some other purchasing projects. So the first item on there we said is we want to bring forward to you is increasing the city manager's current spending limit from the $20,000 up to the $75,000. And so we did do a survey of other cities, and we put this in some of your documents with more cities, but just kind of the highlights there is you can see the other cities, some of them in comparable size, some of them bigger, some of them smaller than Manhattan. And then even you can see anywhere from 100,000 about the top authority a city manager has for spending in Kansas cities. And then if with a little bit regional look, we have the Iowa and the Oklahoma college town comparisons to also see how some other communities are approaching spending in the city manager's authority. And so as you're looking at this, we did a look back to 2018 about what would this impact be. Would that take a lot of items off the agenda process or not? But as you see, a lot of the things that we bring before you are actually already items that are either identified in the CIP budget or have been authorized through the budget process. So what we're doing then is taking that extra step to come before you to actually have you look at the document more closely as we go forward with the bids. But also, as you're well aware, in tonight's agenda legislative packet, the warrant register or listing of all the city expenses is part of every city commission legislative agenda and available online. So we do have the transparency about what has been approved and authorized that may not have come before the city commission. And so to give you a sense of what the impact is, in 2018, all of our meeting agenda items totaled about 412 items. And of those, 123 were purchasing related. Again, many of them were identified in the budget process. But then you can go down a little bit further. The breakdown is to see that 65 items were between 20 and 100,000, 56 got a little bit tighter between the 20 and 75, and then 42 items were between the 20 and 50,000 range. So you can kind of get a sense for us to understand what would be some of the volume that the city manager may approve based upon this increased spending authority. Right now, because of the COVID situation, you did increase the city manager's purchasing authority back in March as part of some other measures you took for temporarily addressing some things to the pandemic. And so right now, the city manager's temporary authority is at $75,000, and that is in effect through December 31st, 2020. And that really has helped us be effective and be nimble and efficient during the pandemic, while also maintaining the transparency and accountability. We report to you in transmittal notes every time the city manager has spent over the 20,000 limit of his old authority up to 75 his new authority. And then again, everything over 75,000 today still comes before the city commission. What we have seen, as we said earlier, is that we think this authority will actually help reduce, and we know it will, some of the number of items on the city commission consent agenda. So that way we're allowing more time for you as commissioners and policymakers to focus on our priority issues. And then since the last 6 months during the pandemic, with the temporary authority, the city manager has approved 38 items between the 20,000 and 75,000. And even some of those actually were related to maybe some change orders of existing projects that you already did approve or adopt. And so all those were communicated to you by transmittal, and they're available in the agenda packets as well. But again, many of those items were COVID pandemic specific items. Others were some things that you had seen but just had a change to them. Also, we wanted to say that in changing the ordinance, the purchase order authority now is one of the 4 things. So as you look at just the authority of the city manager is one component, we wanted to put that in here now with the other 3 changes, instead of having to come back and forth and keep adjusting our ordinance to do nibble here, nibble there. This is what we've kind of evaluated over the last 10 years as some changes that we need. And then you'll also see at the end where the city attorney is going to talk to you about what the process is for changing an ordinance, which is a little bit more onerous than just doing a resolution. So if we're going to do this, we want to do all 4 components at one step tonight as the first reading. So I'll turn it back over to the city attorney, and she can kind of outline our process for adopting a charter ordinance.
So, as a reminder, the charter ordinance, the dollar amount in that, it is a precursor to the other purchasing policy decisions, and it coincides with them. But in the charter ordinance, it only impacts the projects that are over that value, the public improvement projects. So from a charter ordinance only perspective, it really doesn't change anything. Very few of our public improvements are between $20,000 and $75,000. If we do proceed with the charter ordinance, as Dennis said, we have to have an affirmative vote for any charter ordinance of 4 commissioners for it to be considered adopted. The Kansas Constitution requires that it be published in the official newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks in separate weeks. It doesn't take effect until 60 days after that second publication. So there is a delay in the effective dates of any charter ordinance that we adopt. There is an opportunity for someone to contest the charter ordinance. There's a petition provision, and the details are up there, but essentially the petition does not nullify the charter ordinance, it just sends it to a vote of the electorate. So that's our process tonight for consideration of the charter ordinance.
And then as we said, the effective date cannot occur until the expiration of the protest period. And so this is the first step or the first reading of increasing the spending authority. Again, if you choose to move forward with the authority, there would be some other actions that will happen within the next 60 days. As we were talking about, there are some companion documents, and this is really a 3 kind of document process where we also have some information, what we call the resolution for city purchasing, which is impacted by the dollar amount, but also impacted by those definitions of a responsive bid. And then also about doing the estimated cost of a project to allow a department head or a consultant. That would be then reflected in that city purchasing resolution. And then we also have, many of you are familiar with, we have our resolution for architectural and engineering services, and also kind of the engineer on call, if you're familiar with some of that in the past. Those are also some companion documents then would reflect the changes that you do in the charter ordinance. So it kind of cascades with the charter ordinance being the initial document that we work from and incorporate everything into our other resolutions. And even the administrative purchasing policy, where we have the spending authority then of each department head in relation to the city manager and different things about the bids required and different quotes. And so all that then is reflected in these additional resolutions and administrative manual. So how you want to proceed tonight, we are recommending all 4 steps or provisions to change the charter ordinance. It's really a 2-page document, but it has a lot of meat in it. And these 4 things we think are important to help us as we continue to go forward. One, not just in the pandemic, but how we do efficient government and streamline our purchasing and spending policies. And so we'll turn that over to questions either for the city attorney or myself.
Thanks, Dennis and Katie. I do have a couple of questions, and I will also open it up for commissioner questions. About we had something for, is it $25,000 for engineering and architectural services? That we had that list where we just kind of loop them in. If it's, is it for 25, was that also for 25,000 where we have that list?
The on-call? Are you talking about
Yeah, for all the on-call ones.
Yeah. The Public Works Director, Rob Ott, can speak to that.
Evening, Mayor, Commissioners. No, that was a dollar amount on construction. I'd have to go back and look, but I want to say it's around 1.5 to 2 million. And then, so, you know, typically it's somewhere between 8% and 14% on engineering fees. But yes, it is kind of we have 4 different categories: transportation, water, wastewater, and stormwater. And yes, some of you sat on those committees before, selected those consultants, and then we kind of go in order, you know, for things that have already been predetermined. Things that are unique or that require additional studies, that's when we do the RFQs, and then obviously those come before the commission and so forth.
So that was for a percentage, not just like a $20,000, $25,000 or under?
If you want, I can go do some quick checking.
I was just wondering. I think that was, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, A&E services are different out of this. Again, as Dennis kind of explained earlier, the A&E document, architect and engineering services, is a companion document that will come back to the commission. Unless Katie, I misspoke. So
no, the dollar amount in the A&E contract is $10,000.
$10,000. Okay.
And today, I mean, the city manager, you know, even if it's underneath that dollar amount, the city manager obviously reviews those. I don't approve those contracts. Frankly, myself and Brian and my other staff, we like that separation. You know, so that it's not an engineer approving another engineer's A&E services. It's either Ron or it's something that's coming to the commission for consideration.
Thank you. So with that one in mind, just that one particular item, I have plenty of questions, but with that particular item, and since Katie, you said 10,000, would this increase it to 75,000?
So that's something that we could get commission guidance on. So as Dennis said, we will return with a revision to the A&E resolution, which has the dollar limit of $10,000. And what Rob was referring to before was the engineer on call portion of that same resolution that has the $1.5 million project limit, in which he can use the on-call services, which is a competitive process to be on our on-call list. So he was referring to that. When we come back to you with those resolutions, we'll propose a dollar amount increase to the $10,000 that coincides with the guidance the city commission gives.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot in there. So I will have a commissioner comment and questions for
Hattusall here. Okay, so I wasn't here, I don't think, for this engineer on call thing. Give me the 30-second
Sure.
breakdown on that, what that
So,
means.
so basically, we did an RFQ, Commissioner, and we solicited qualifications, 4 different categories, as I explained.
Yep.
I believe all the firms that are on in those different categories are all local firms here in the community. And essentially, let's see, I put something in the capital improvement plan. I know I'm going to replace a water line from A to B, B to C. It's not some massive study. I need a consultant to design it, get it to bid, and we need to construct it in 2021. And we would just go in order down that list. There's, I believe, 3 different engineering firms in each of the 4 categories. And I believe all the engineering firms are in 2 different categories. And they decided on which categories they thought were their strengths or weaknesses. And that's what they competed for, and that's what they were selected for.
So we don't have to, every project doesn't have to be.
An RFQ. Again, you know, I heard a lot of discussion back in February of 2020 here about efficient government and so on and so forth from you all. That's a little bit of what we're trying to accomplish tonight. And that's a little bit of what we tried to do with the A&E policy the last few years as well, is things that we have known scope and not necessarily fee, but definitely known scope. That isn't an elaborate, unique item. We can be more efficient, and we can save, anywhere between 60 and 90 days in that RFQ process and so forth.
Okay.
So quick enough. That wasn't quite 30 seconds, but was that quick
So
enough?
just to add to that, along with that component, if we go by the existing policy, not the emergency one, basically that contract with that engineer or consulting firm, if it's under 20, I can approve it. If it's over 20, it still comes to you, even though it's on call. This threshold, if we were to take that to 50 or 75, would still be the separation of that.
Okay. All right.
Go.
If anybody's got, I don't have any more questions for you. If anybody has questions for Rob, fire
Yeah.
away. I'll come back to Dennis.
I guess,
So
Mayor,
I wanted to follow up with Mark's question. How often do the engineering firm, does our policy allow a new selection or another engineering firm to get included, or does it just stay those same 3 forever?
no,
Yeah.
in fact, I think we've gone through it twice now, Commissioner.
okay.
I don't recall off the top of my head when that
don't either.
expiration is. It's probably coming up here in the next year or 2.
Okay.
But we have,
Seems like it's been in place for a while, which causes me to ask. Okay.
but we've gone out twice and solicited, engineering firms to recompete. And so forth. So.
Because there is consulting services, engineers, architects, accountants rise and fall. Some companies lose their strongest employees and others keep building, and so there is some changeover in their credibility and reputation, and I just want to be sure that we're able to take advantage of that best offer. Thank you.
Yeah, but this on-call engineering thing really was done for a whole different reason. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And the idea was that, we still have to approve everything, but you don't have to go through the process of getting RFPs from 5 different groups, put together a committee, have them come down and interview. Very time consuming. So what we did was we eliminated that. We said all of these guys, I think I was on the group that selected them, that all of these people are qualified. And so therefore, we shorten the procurement time because we allow the Public Works Director to just say, okay, we're going to pick this one. We still have to vote on the cash money.
Isn't there a rotation?
So it's not really related to this from the standpoint of what we're talking about tonight.
I'm just asking for clarification about that, because Mark wasn't here and I couldn't remember that part.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm one of the departments that is tasked for accomplishing brick and mortar projects, getting things done. So, some of the things that Dennis and Katie have already highlighted, when I was city engineer, in terms of always being the one that had to prepare the engineer's estimates, sometimes it seemed silly to me. Park and Rec would come to me and say, we're building, there was one I remember, they were building something at the band pavilion. And I was like, okay, I haven't reviewed the plans, I didn't prepare the plans, and I've got to swear an oath that this cost estimate's this. it makes more sense in terms of who knows the most about the project. There's certainly other projects that are unique where we hire architects, landscape architects, just, even technology. If we had to make purchases and stuff and make upgrades, it's not necessarily something that's always in the city engineer's purview. So that's certainly one improvement. The other thing too, and I know Commissioner Hassel, you kind of vented earlier tonight about KDHE, but unfortunately there are times that there are state and federal mandates that kind of push us to get projects done. And sometimes they are unique in nature, and those estimates come in higher than, or those bids come in higher than our estimates, but we're up against deadlines and so forth. So again, I think that's another important change. I know you're all going to probably have a debate about what the limit should be set. I want to emphasize there are a number of those 4 different items up there. There's definitely 3 items from my perspective, from my department's perspective, is important. You all can debate the threshold, whether it's 50,000 or 75,000. But from my perspective, there's at least 3 items, regardless of where we go tonight, I think would really help out, especially on the language on awarding projects. I think we've learned a number of lessons over time, and I think it puts the city in the best position in awarding those projects and moving forward. So with that, Mayor, Commissioners, do you have any more questions for me?
Okay, now I can ask the question, and I think you can be the one. So how do we know if it's the consultant who's doing the design of the project, that it's a reasonable estimate? If there's, or is the consultant going to, you have an independent consultant review the other, the person who's doing the design and bidding and estimating, is there going to be somebody different, or are you just going to take the one person's word for it that it's $1 million deal?
So I'll tell you how we do our public projects. So let's say local consultant ABC has prepared an estimate for the next phase of Kimball Avenue. And, we ask for cost estimates at field check, which is a roughly 50% plans. We ask for an office check cost estimate when we're at about 80 or 90%, and then obviously a final. At each of those stages, we certainly look at what is their cost per unit of item. And are they reasonable? The other thing is I came from KDOT 15 years ago. I still have connections there, and I get their average bid tabs for this region of Kansas in District 1, Area 5. So we get those averages for bid items, and we take a look at what's our consultant doing, where are we at, does everything seem reasonable? We also bid things ourselves, so we look at those bid items. I can't speak for other departments, but that is certainly how my department and how my engineers do it. There's at least 2 checks before we go to bid. Are we in the ballpark, or are we in trouble?
Commissioner, I would just add, we have shifted away from traditional design bid build on a lot of our projects, and we've went to design build. That process requires teams to submit rates for all aspects of the project. So all pre-construction services, which include design and any type of value engineering, have a fee associated with them that then we can sit there and compare teams as they come in. Some of our approach here of late has been more about get it down to the top 3 based on the interviews, open up the price proposals, and then evaluate where you're at. So at least there you have a check. If you go traditional design bid build, you do an RFP for more qualification than anything, because you don't even have a project. You don't even know what that scope is. At least with design build, they're going to be with you defining that scope, and they can compete with other teams who are at least putting dollar amounts to their scope. So design build is where we've tried to head with a lot of our projects. The problem we face, and I think this policy helps us, so much of what we do requires you all and the community to get educated on what it is we're attempting to design and build. Sometimes that requires us to go engage with an architect early so they can get concepts, schematics, visuals that you all can see and the community can see as to what it is we're talking about to improve upon. If we can select that team early enough in a design build approach, we can compare the cost. If we wait too late, we'll end up in our joint maintenance facility. We've had an architectural team on board now for over a year and a half. We ended up doing a construction manager at risk process to select the contractor. If we would have backed up and committed to that project, a design build, in my mind, would have been a much more efficient and evaluatory process where we could have deciphered between companies, not only based on our qualifications, but on their price too. So as we talk about things for the CIP, as we talk about projects moving forward, and this is really not in Rob's realm. This is not public works. This is not streets, sewer, water. This is for vertical construction. This is for projects that we're out doing that are not everyday type of things. When you build 2 new rec centers, or you build the Douglas Rec Center, or the joint maintenance facility, or a metal shed to put your disinfection, that design build process allows us the flexibility that you're talking about.
All right, that's it for now.
I guess the only other last thing I would say for increasing the dollar amount, Dennis presented kind of the number of items that would be taken off the consent agenda. I will tell you, poor Miss Brenda, and the amount of effort and time that goes into each memo, her staff and my staff, city manager's staff, it is about making government more efficient. There's a lot of time and energy that goes from all different departments in preparing that commission memo. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're debating that.
That's my question. The 56 items were between 20 and 75,000. So and that's in 2018, of the 123 purchasing items. That means if you take that minus the 67 were over. Basically, you're ending up with half of the items not coming back through us. Of those 56, I mean, are there things that stand out? Were there things that, that's the question, everything's going to be it's going to be transparent, it's going to be more efficient, but are we going to miss that dialogue on things in that 56 items? And that, I don't know. I don't know what those items are.
Sure, I'll tell you what, Ron knows that I prepare a lot of inter-office memos where I make whoever the project manager is, who's solicited either bids or quotes or whatever the improvement or maintenance item or purchase might be, they have to sign off on it, I sign off on it, and then it goes down to Ron for consideration as well. There are some internal checks and balances that we're doing now. They're just on the lower end of the price range. Obviously during this pandemic, the dollar amounts increased, so we've adjusted where those thresholds are. So I don't know if someone else wants to add on to that.
I would just recall that, I can't put my finger on anything specific, but I would recall on all of that 2018 thing, there were probably a handful of commission meetings where there were questions on the consent agenda for a particular item. So pretty rare. And I think if there are other ways that we can enhance our transparency, we're certainly willing to do that.
I don't think the commission has sufficient oversight with regard to this claims register. It's pretty meaningless to us. We can't identify what project an expense even goes to. And the credit cards charges are all just jammed together and there's no definition whatsoever. So when you get a new accounting system, it seems to me that as a board of directors or a commission needs better financial oversight on just, if we're going to have it, it needs to be better. And I viewed the increase to I at the time lobbied for 50,000, I recall, and the commission wanted to go to 75. And I agreed to that on the emergency basis because we didn't know what was ahead, and we still don't, for the next couple of months or the next 6 months, however long this is going to take to play out. And as long as we're in a declared emergency, I'm comfortable with the 75,000. That doesn't mean that, I mean, you've got this new freedom and you like it. And I'm just interested in making sure that we do our oversight in a responsible way. So maybe we need to work on how we can better oversee things, or at least understand what's being presented. We never know. I mean, if a project went over, I can't recall if a project has ever gone over the amount we have authorized. And maybe, Ron, it's because you're so good at pushing them down and pushing it down under the amount, or saying that can't happen. But I'm just saying there's no way for us to know those kinds of things. But we're ultimately accountable for them.
Yeah,
So-
I would just add that, you know, a lot of those come through as change order on public works projects. So, and that spending threshold is there. And I would say most that might go over what the original contract was based on quantities. So we had an estimated quantity of 1,000 linear feet of a certain pavement. But when they actually installed it, they put in 1,200. So it went, you had a unit price established, so it was a measured in place. That's the as-built change order is typically what was actually installed and measured for the agreed upon unit price. So those are more of the ones that may be a little more or maybe a little less, depending on how good that original estimate was. But you do come across items that you run into a bad subbase, so you didn't have anticipate that, and so there wasn't a unit price. So there are some new quantities and new items that come into play, or you add additional rock or erosion control that for situations that you run into, or have to replace an inlet that you weren't expected to. So there are different things that come up in public improvement projects, obviously,
Sure.
that gather that, but those are, a lot of projects have a contingency, so
Okay.
that
True.
you can make up for those.
And also, as I look at these, this survey of city manager purchasing authorities, the 50,000 seems to be the mid-range where the majority are. So I wondered if there have been any other communities like we did that upped the limit during the emergency, and have they had to move theirs up also? I mean, this is old data, and there's a limit to how much you can invest in it, and I can ask all kinds of I wonder questions. So I don't know that I expect you to do anything but specific. But anyway, just generally, I'm the most comfortable with the 50,000.
And I did want to highlight
My
to your,
thoughts on the, the idea of raising this is, I look at it as a form of empowerment. Some of you have discussed, well, you have oversight. No, you don't have any when you empower someone. You essentially give the reins, they make the decision, you live with the results. Otherwise, you shouldn't empower them. And so that's where you're going when you do this. And sure, it's put on the register and we see that the money's spent, but it's just like when the education thing was put out on, we're gonna do mask education. And city staff spent $65,000 on that one. Fine, you have to accept it. Why? Because we empowered them to do it. But we can't overturn that at that point. And so what you're doing is you are giving away the oversight when you raise the amount. It's just that simple. And that's really what the issue is.
Here's what you.
Going back to item number 2 of the proposed changes, set the standard on the bid awarding from lowest and best responsible to the lowest responsible bidder who submits a responsive bid. What is the thing you're trying to, what is the main word there? Is it responsive bid? Is that the thing you're trying to implement? And what does that mean? People are making incomplete bids, but they're lowest, so we're supposed to take them, and then they find out it's all messed up?
I'd say the most common one is where you have somebody's submitted a bid for a product that isn't even close to the specifications, but it's $20,000 lower than everybody else. So it looks appealing to you as an elected official to save money, but it doesn't meet the specifications, and so it just makes the whole process more confusing, where and some avoid specifically some responses that we've asked for in the submittal process. And so if they haven't been thorough in their documentation and their submittal, that's a reason potentially not to award it. It depends on how big of a circumstance that it is, or an omission that it might be.
So who decides that, what constitutes responsive versus unresponsive? Is it the department head? Is it city staff? Is it
It's a
commission?
team review, and legal's involved in that as well.
Okay.
And you're right, the key word is responsive bid, and with every RFP, even with you see the strategic plan, we have the criteria spelled out. And so that is what the team evaluates against. Did that bid address those criteria? And so that's where we kind of get to the responsive bid is the important phrase.
So you couldn't just eliminate that because the specs are bad and just eliminate it on the face, or you're concerned that, yeah, like you say, the commission sees the $20,000 lower price tag and says, I don't care, just get that, save some money?
Well, if there's a question about whether or not it's a viable reason to reject, then it makes you more vulnerable to a challenge. So part of that's a legal aspect of protecting our decision, but making it clear to the person that we're delineating this authority on making that decision, whether it's me or you or the commission as a whole.
Okay, well, that clears that up, thank you.
And I did want to highlight to Commissioner Morris's point about it is kind of hard when you see the list of warrant, the spending that's gone on for the past month or week as it may be. That's why since the temporary increase the manager spending authority, we have done one transmittal for each time that he has done a spending authority above the 20,000. And so we've been more transparent and we've expanded upon what was done, what was the purchase amount, and why. And so we've separated out a little bit more enhanced transparency under this scenario for that very reason, because sometimes it is hard to filter through the different warrants and all the spending just listed out. But we've done separate transmittals for each time we've done above the 20,000 under the city manager's authority.
I want to make a comment on what Mark was talking about here on this lowest responsible bid. I'm used to, when I worked for Army Material Command, we changed to best value. Did you consider that? Best value procurement?
We went through a whole lot of terminologies and trying to find out.
Basically what best value procurement is where you look at, price, quality, and expertise. And so you don't necessarily pick the lowest bidder. It gives you the flexibility to pick best value for the city. If you don't like somebody's expertise, even though they gave the lowest bid, you don't have to pick them. And I like that system better, mainly because I've worked with it, I guess. I've got some bias, towards it. But that one's easier to define than the verbiage I see here. I mean, I'm with Mark on that. This verbiage, meaningless to me.
Actually, I think what we just had, the conversation, the responsive bid, that is fundamental for us, because if bidders don't address the basic criteria, then that says one thing, so that we're not caught in a position where they have the lowest bid, but they don't have the right product or the right amount or whatever it may be. And so really, I think the responsive bid, as we looked at other communities, we kind of went through some of their language as well, that we found that to be a fundamental piece as we go forward.
So why don't you change it to responsive bid, lowest responsive bid?
We are trying to capture two things. I don't know if the city attorney wants to expand on some of the phraseology of this, but there really are 2 points in there. One, you have to first respond to the bid and understand the criteria that we've outlined during our process, but then also make sure that they have the bid that matches what the request is.
Because you're saying change it from lowest and best responsible bidder to lowest responsible bidder for the purpose to make sure that they are responsive bids.
So there's two things there. You're talking one about are they addressing the bid, and then are they qualified? Do they have the wherewithal to actually deliver on that bid?
If I may, this city attorney, Katie Jackson. So This first section, the standard you're talking about here that we're looking at, only applies to your traditional design bid build process. So this is really that process where we put out the plans, we ask for bids, and we're primarily looking at the cost and to make sure that they have responded to the plans appropriately. Using a best value or best responsible is a more qualitative based decision that we are not currently making when we do a traditional design bid build. So we have removed the qualitative wording from this, and we've also made it more consistent with the state law case law in the area of only this one process, which is design bid build, and consistent with other cities. Evaluations like best value certainly have a place in what the city does. They would be under Section 3. Section 3 is our alternative process, and it allows the city, through the city commission, to approve any alternative to the traditional, what I'm going to call low bid scheme. And we do often, in those alternative process, we often do consider some of the things that you all are concerned about and want to address. So we'll do a best value or a qualifications-based analysis of the bidders or the proposers in the alternative process. So we do have an avenue to do that, but I just want everyone to remember that when we're talking about the standard, the only application of it is in the very traditional low bid design bid build process. That's why it's really limiting it to you're the low bidder, you've given us the information we asked for. Anything qualitative would fall under an alternative process, and we could pursue that, certainly, and consider a best value or all those other factors in one of those different processes.
Right, but responsive is not a qualitative item. Responsive is part of responsible. Otherwise, isn't
it's not under the law.
Responsive is not?
Responsible and responsive are distinct construction low bid legal terms. They're distinct. So responsible under the law tends to be not responsible in terms of like best value or qualifications, but that you can get the bonds and the insurance, and that you have the licenses, and you have sort of those kind of mechanical basics. And then responsive is actually responding to the particulars of the bid. So they're distinct in the law, and they both relate specifically to low bid processes.
Okay, I understand the change now. I think it was confusing because it says it's to ensure that we are selecting responsive bids, which is not what we're doing. What we are doing is just to see if they have the capacity to even move forward with the project, is what I'm hearing.
Are they legitimate?
Legitimate,
Is that
yeah.
a potentially good synonym for responsible in this? The company is a legit outfit that can get bonding. They do what they say they're going to do. That's what you're looking for under responsible bidder, more or less.
Yes, that's
Okay.
a good summary.
Because responsive is what was confusing here as Commissioner Hattasol, so I just thought, why don't you just put that instead? Okay.
And that's why best value procurement covers all of that and cuts out the second step. It covers price, it covers quality, it covers expertise, and it's an easier way of doing it.
This is Commissioner Estabrook. I can see clearly why going over 56 items and discussing the legality of responsive and responsible would be tedious and take up a lot of the commission's time. The fact here for me, and you guys can continue as if you wish, but it's not an issue of I think what we have an opportunity here is a trade-off. If there's less time spent doing this and preparing all of the paperwork and the packets to get to that point where we're not actually, where those items or half the purchase items are being kind of taken care of through the city manager's office, but there is more transparency either in our packets or in other forms in the way that you've already started to deliver those in inter-office memos, but potentially on the website. That's the trade-off. You have an opportunity for the public, because right now, regardless of the threshold of the amount, as Commissioner Morris noted that those, reading through those sheets that we have in our packet and the expenditures, the credit card, all of that is somewhat, it's transparent because it's there, but it's somewhat hard to decipher. Changing the number on that doesn't necessarily make that more transparent. So what I think the trade-off is, we have more communication, we have better opportunity to see what these are, but free up staff time to process that. So I would be in favor of the 75,000, as I don't see much of a difference between the 50 and the 75, and the amount of items that's significant enough. I'm supportive, but you need 4, right?
Thank you. So I have a couple of more questions for you. So I'm glad you clarified that, Katie, because I was kind of stuck on what that exactly meant. The other piece that Commissioner Hattasol brought up was the bids, the 7%, I think that's what he brought up earlier, on low bids and greater than 7%. I think my fear is, I don't mind moving it to maybe 9 or 10%, but I don't want to just keep it an open, a greater percent of any amount, because I don't know what action is in the best interest of the city means. My fear is if somebody does come in with a low estimated probable bid, and anybody can just give a great reason for why they're going to be 20% more. And I don't want them to take advantage of it without at least having that discussion here, if that change order is going to be pretty big.
Oh, that section we're talking about means all bids. So where you don't have an outlier, if someone's 20% above or whatever, our threshold, as we're saying right now, is at 7%. So that triggers us to rethink, did we miss the ball on something with our estimates? Did the cost of cement go up this week, or asphalt, or whatever it may be? But it really does give us that pause or that trigger. As to the definition in the best interest of the city, again, there has to be some rationale that we would outline for you. But as Katie was saying, our city attorney, there is a provision for the alternative process. And so I think this is what we can factor into there, if you want to expand on that or continue on with that.
Sure. Again, what you're referring to is only in that traditional design bid build low bid process. And I should have addressed one of Commissioner Butler's comments a little better, which is the best value. What we're trying to do with this process that you asked about, Mayor Reddy, we're trying to make it as streamlined as possible. And we don't do best value and expertise. Best value is a great criteria under our alternative process. We don't want to do it here because this is your very basic projects where you don't want to have to look at expertise and evaluate those things. These are the very straightforward projects. Only when these projects, before they're even awarded, when all bids exceed the estimate, will it come to the commission, and the city staff will have to provide the information to the commission as to why it's in the best interest of the city to proceed with bids that are above the estimate. What we're doing is really critical because the charter ordinance currently says that the department director who oversees the project, they have to submit a memo to the commission that describes why the bids were higher than the estimate. Well, the department director can't always answer that. I mean, it could be a lot of factors. They might have some ideas, but they may not. And it may not be relevant. The fact that the bids are higher, it may not be the issue. The issue is whether it's in the best interest of the city to proceed with those bids, even though they came in high. So that would allow the department instead to tell you things like what we addressed before. Is this a compliance issue? Is it a schedule issue? Have there been material or labor increases that we've seen that we think we need to capture and award this project now? So you'll still get that information from staff if the bids come in over the estimate. It's just we're going to give you different information and information why we should proceed, instead of trying to explain the difference between an estimate that we may not have prepared and the bids that we definitely didn't prepare.
I think that makes sense, because one of the things that most of those are usually in our consent agenda, and unless you read through those consent agendas, we just approve them. So it could be $100,000 change. We had a couple of change orders tonight, that were pretty extensive in my opinion, but they're change orders. And unless you read through it, you don't really understand that it was a change order and why.
This doesn't apply to change orders at all. This is just the pre-award bid evaluation. The section that we're talking about,
Right.
the 7%. It's not applicable to change orders
Yeah,
after
I was
award.
just using that as an
Sure.
example,
So,
as when some things change.
Mayor and Katie, to maybe make you feel better, you're saying in the best interest of the city is determined by the city commission.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So there you go. So if we think it's crazy to move forward with this project that's 9% over budget,
Yeah.
we kill it. If we think, yeah, that makes, the arguments that they make as to why 7% over budget, 8% over budget is still a good idea, and we think, sounds good, move forward. But we are the final determinants of what constitutes in the best interest of the city.
Is that accurate?
Yes, correct.
I
Ron,
think
did you want to add something?
I was just going to comment that this happens often. I mean, we were just out for a project that the bids came in high. By policy, we're doing things internally to evaluate, and we usually end up coming and reject it. And then we get authorization from you all to go negotiate, or work with a consultant to redo the scope and go back out. I mean, a lot of times our engineers that put that estimate out there have missed the mark. Most of the time it's not us, most of the time it's our hired engineer. So we scramble around to get that project moving forward. We've got bids that are high, we evaluate whether to even pursue it at this point in time. Maybe we wait 6 months. Where I think this is valuable is it gives us the ability to come back and talk about it with you with a change in policy that gives flexibility to do what is in the best interest of the city. Right now, the policy handcuffs us to reject bids and then get direction from you on how you'd like us to proceed. This gives greater flexibility to the governing body.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with all of that. The purchasing authority to 75,000. I think I'm going to stick with the 50,000 during this emergency state. It's been reasonable to have 75,000 because of decisions you would have to make. I think the 50,000, it's still good to have those, have some discussion. I understand, we get it in our mail folder, we see it in the consent agenda. But unless we have a discussion like this, people really don't know what's going on. And sometimes our meetings might go long, sometimes we might get in the weeds, but I think that's what we are elected to do. So I'm more comfortable with the $50,000 purchasing order as it relates to this agenda item this evening. Are there any other questions or comments? Any public comments? I did not receive anything on this one. Brenda, did we receive any comments on this item? Okay. Seeing no public comments, I'll open it up for motion.
May I, City
Yes.
Attorney Katie Jackson, if I may before, give you some guidance on the motion.
Please.
So we have this scheduled for a second reading. And as you remember, this takes 4 affirmative votes for a charter ordinance to pass. And I've heard 2 say that they might support a different dollar amount than it's in the proposed ordinance. So your options are to make a motion as presented for $75,000 and vote on that, to make a motion but on a different dollar amount and vote on that, or you can make in either case you can make the motion and direct us to change it on second reading. So I just want everyone to note that first reading, it is not effective after that. We will come back and we can make those changes on second reading. So bear that in mind. Tonight it's a little different.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve first reading of a charter ordinance, amending charter ordinance number 44 regarding the process for developing public improvement contracts, and before the second reading, changed it to $50,000 for the city staff's spending authority.
Is there a second?
Second.
Brenda, please call the roll.
Mayor Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler.
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being so patient with all those questions.
Mayor, did you need to adjourn the meeting? Did we say that?
I think that's it for this evening. We are adjourned for this evening. Thank you.